That's a very important verse. Sarvapadi venirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses are purified. Okay, and then the verse you're studying this week. These are very important verses. Ata Shri Krishna Namadina Bhaved Grayam Indriyai Sevan Mukehi Jivado Swayam Eva Sparatyada. Therefore, material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of the Lord's food, the tongue is purified, and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. All right, please put in your questions for 9 to 12. By the way, I'm expecting to have a guest for our second class. Okay, in relation to the wives of the Brahmanas who immediately went to feed Krishna, it is said in the Archana section that by worshiping Vishnu, one can achieve Vaikuntha Loka. Goloka is part of Vaikuntha. It's like when you talk about Mathura, Vrindavan is part of Mathura, the Mathura Mandala. When you talk about Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, and Goloka are part of Vaikuntha. The benefits of having the association of Tulsi reminds me of the benefits of association with our acharyas, yet Tulsi is most pleased when you offer her leaves to the lotus feet of Krishna. How this action is related to our service rendered through one's personal spiritual master. I'm not sure. I'm not really quite understanding this. What does Urja mean? Urja. Chapter 12. Let's take a look, see what you're asking.
Urja-vrat. It's talking about Urja-vrat.
Okay, let me take a look. Pretty sure that means just lighting a lamp. Pretty sure that's what it means. We have Ujjwala, which means effulgent. There's a lady named Urjwa. Arundhati is also called Urja. So Kartik is also called Urja. It's another name for the month of Kartik. So it just means Kartik vow or Urja vow, but I'm pretty sure Urja is related to a lamp, to light, because we have Ujjwala. But anyway, it's just another name for Kartik. Why only Gaudiya Vaishnava wears Tulsi Kanti and is not essential in other sampradaya? Am I missing anything? That is a really good question. I will have to ask someone else. And ask me again next week. And I'll see if by then I can have an answer for you on that. I'm going to ask one more person who might know the answer to this. And we'll see what answer we get. Okay, those devotees who are householders accept Vedic ritualistic performances as well as prescribed duties. No, lost it. The prescribed duties of devotional service mean hearing, chanting, remembering. Yes. Devotional service and friendship can be divided to two. What does it mean? We'll be discussing that today. I'm not sure if it's the first or second class. Anyway, we'll be discussing that. What does complete self-surrender mean? We'll be discussing that. If someone sees the face of the Lord while Artika is going on, he can be relieved of all sin-free actions. Are we free from the material bondage of the world? Certainly, and we have the statement where Prabhupada said these things are true for some people, but not for all. So in other words, the potential is there, and we may experience it or we may not, but the potential is there in the activity. If we reside near to the place where great acharyas have visited, my understanding is, why do we need to visit Vrindavan? All right, well, this is the difference. This is a very good question. This is the difference between a tirtha and a dham. So a dham is permanent, a tirtha is temporary. When the whole material world is destroyed, the dhams are not destroyed. They're not part of the material world at all. So the dham is always the dham, but a tirtha is something temporary. You could think of it like you have a Wi-Fi permanently installed in your home. And if you're out and about with your phone, you can use your phone as like a Wi-Fi, right? Your phone can act like a hotspot. And then you move away and it's not there anymore. So somebody sitting next to you outside at the park, and you have your phone.
He's on the covers a little bit, so I was told, but besides that.
But it's not permanent. So if we go to a building and we have an altar there and we install deities, that becomes a tirtha. Because they weren't there before, it was an ordinary building. And when we leave again, it becomes an ordinary building. I mean, the potency may last for some time after we leave. I had an experience that we were selling our building that we had used as a Gurukula, and there hadn't been any school going on there for a year, at least a year and a half. The building was completely empty. No furniture, no books, nothing. And I was staying next door. So at that time I was working in a government school, in a public school. So I was going out in a business suit. So I come back and wearing my business suit, and there's these two young men on the property. How can I help you? And one of them said, I came here earlier to look at the property. I was thinking of buying it. And I wanted to bring my friend because there was such unusual energy in the place. He said, I've just never experienced any kind of energy like that in the place. It was amazing. And that's because, we were all chanting Bhagavad Gita. We were all studying Bhakti Shastri and chanting Bhagavad Gita and chanting Bhagavatam and having worship there for many, many years. So even a year after we all left, there was still something there. But that's not going to stay forever. It dissipates. Tirtha means a crossing place. It's like a narrow part of a river where you can cross over. It's like a portal. It's like a door or an access place. Whereas a dham is permanently a holy place. It's not just an access point. So also nice to go visit the dham, even if you make your home in tirtha. If we have attraction places other than material, the illusory energy will capture us. Should we go to any dham? Yeah. Should we sit at home, think we have the dham in our home? Yes, both. Create a tirtha in your home and visit the dham. Not now, when it's COVID.
Mother, I have a question related to this one. Because in the Varaha Purana, it is been said about Mathura, saying that if you just touch Mathura and all, it is like as good as visiting all the dhams. Now, every Purana and everything is saying like, in a different way. Okay, some says that you touch Vrindavana and you are at the highest level. And it is like, how do we take these ones? And like a neophyte, a fellow like me, okay, let's not go to any dham, just sit at home and, visualize everything and
you can do that too. I mean, many of the associates of Lord Chaitanya never went to Vrindavan. In fact, most of the associates, so Damodar, Gadadhar Pandi, they never went to Vrindavan. Of course, they're right there with the Lord, and Jagannath Puri is also a dham. But it's interesting that they never went to Vrindavan. So certainly you can make your home into a tirtha and you don't need to go anywhere. At the same time, it's nice to go to the dham where Krishna had his pastimes.
Yes. I just had that question when I was reading that line.
Yes. What should a neophyte devotee do? Yeah?
So when we call the temples devotees are building all around the world, and they call it New Raya Mandala Dam or whatever dam is wrong? You should say
don't worry about it.
Hare Krishna Mataji, regarding Prashant Prabhu's
you don't have to go there and make a big noise and tell them they have to change the name of their temple. Just let people be happy. But technically speaking, it's a tirtha. You don't have to fight with people about everything. Yes, Supriya Gopi?
Regarding Prashant Prabhu's following the question I'm asking you, is it that if we stay at home and then without going to dham, is it possible to get the equal amount of benefits and when we do the puja at home?
Yeah, you get 1,000 times more benefit when you do puja in a holy place. So if you establish your place as a holy place, yes.
Okay. So then the relationship Vatsalya Rasa or conjugal relationship with Krishna, because every time I read in the book, it says like you have to go to Vrindavan or do the deity worship for Radha and Krishna.
Yeah, all right. If all of us went to Vrindavan, what would happen? Suppose every single member of the Hare Krishna movement, or whatever it is, 150,000 of us, 250,000 of us, suppose we all went to Vrindavan, what would happen?
It wouldn't be special anymore?
Well, it would still be special.
It will be flooded with the devotees and it will give a wrong example saying that, okay, only if I am in dham is where I get purified. And where would be the space left?
It would just be overcrowded.
Yeah, it would actually be a disservice to the dham. No, we wouldn't be able, it would be a problem with water and sewage and traffic. And then what about our mission for Lord Chaitanya?
Yeah, I mean, every town and village is not just Vrindavan.
That's right. And one of the 7 purposes of ISKCON is to establish holy places, at least one. So we want to try to establish holy places in various parts of the world. We have a preaching mission. Prabhupada left Vrindavan for his preaching mission. Now, Prabhupada wanted the devotees to visit like Mayapur Dham every year. But again, please don't do that right now in the pandemic. But he also wanted us to establish preaching. That's more important, actually, for most of us.
But Prabhupada stayed for a bit in Vrindavan Dham, no Mataji, maybe I don't know how many years he stayed.
Many years.
Then he came back and did the preaching and everything. In fact, he did there also, but he still stayed in Vrindavan for a certain amount of time. So I don't know.
We are all encouraged to visit the Dham, and we're sometimes we're told don't stay for more than 3 days because you may commit offenses. But we're all encouraged to visit the Dham if possible.
Also, Prabhu, isn't this teachings of Jiva Goswami, where somewhere he mentioned Mathura is not a place, it's a state of consciousness.
That is also very much true. That is also very much true. And what we're advised is if you can't go to the Dham physically, you should at least go in your mind. But Bhaktisiddhanta said, if you go to Radhakund and you have materialistic consciousness, then you're not in Radhakund, you're in Narakakund. You're in hell. So we can be in Vrindavan mentally anywhere, and we can be in hell mentally anywhere. But there is also power in the place. I mean, if you think about it, you know, I can think about America anywhere, but there's still some difference in thinking about America and being in America. I can be in an American embassy someplace, and that's sort of it being in America, but sort of not. Not entirely so. It is and it isn't. What should neophyte do when he hears blasphemy words from the fellow senior devotees? Oh, ouch. If it's somebody that you don't feel that you can correct, then best to just change the subject or leave. We're supposed to bow down or stand up for the Lord. It seems both are instructed. Yes. Actually, Prabhupada, when like the curtains opened, he would first stand up and then he would bow down. How do we transition from expecting Krishna's mercy to being unmotivated in devotional service? Unmotivated means that we're not going to Krishna asking him for something for our personal benefit. But that's not the main reason I'm going to Krishna. Even if I ask Krishna for something for my personal benefit, that's not the main reason I'm going to him. So let's say you have some friend in this world and you like your friend and you just like being with your friend. You're not with your friend for their money. You're not with their friend for anything in particular, except just you like being with your friend. You're enjoying the feeling of friendship with your friend. Whatever you're doing, taking walks in the park, you're playing a game with them, whatever, having dinner with them. Now you might ask them for something, you know, you might ask them for a favor, but that's not why you're their friend. So that's very different from expecting Krishna's mercy. Expecting Krishna's mercy is we know that Krishna loves us and we know that he wants us back. And our mood is not that I'm paying the price exactly. The only price for Krishna consciousness is a great desire for it. It's not that I'm paying a price by my sadhana, but I'm just expecting that Krishna will someday be kind to me and someday allow me back, that he is kind. I don't have a view of God as evil and vindictive. When you're unable to defend the Lord of his devotees, why is giving up life a better process than leaving the place? Well, it certainly isn't a better process for us. Please don't commit suicide, just leave. What if someone puts on tilak but is not a pure devotee at heart? Would they also not be touched by the Yamadutas? That's an interesting question. You know, to what extent do these things have power if done ritualistically? And the answer is not much. If you do something ritualistically, it doesn't have much power, but it can. You know, just like if you happen to go to Vrindavan, even as a tourist, there's still some effect. You eat prasadam without knowing it, there's still some effect. How do we offer a favorite article? In the early days of ISKCON, very early days, there were some temples that had like a big basket in front of the deities, and the devotees offered everything, even like their blue jeans and stuff, before they wore them. They would put them in front of the altar. I understand this in two ways. First of all, if there's something that I really like, I could give it to Krishna. If it's something that could be used directly in service, like maybe some jewelry or some food. The other thing is that I take what I really like and I use it for Krishna. Something that I really like, something that I'm really attached to. Defeating the opposing party, give up his life, just leave the place. Yeah. How important is worshiping deities? Any difference between temple worship and home worship? Srila Prabhupada actually encouraged both. And if you live right next to a temple and you're part of a temple community, he discouraged people having their own worship at home because he felt that would detract from worshiping the deity in the temple. But if you're not going to the temple every day, then having your own deities is also very beneficial. Prabhupada encouraged both. Bowing down in honor of the deity. Yeah?
So regarding the deity worship, like we have Gauranitai at home, is it sufficient to have Gauranitai and then can we develop such type of relationship, or we have to, in the later stage, we have to keep Radha Krishna deity also at home? And
you could even just have a picture of the Lord that you're worshiping. And Gauranitai is also Krishna Balaram. So Gauranitai are also avatari. So they can certainly award you with all relationships as you mature. I mean, you might, as you mature, if you become more attached to Radha Krishna, you might decide you want to start worshiping Radha Krishna. That's possible, but it's not necessary. Bowing down in honor of the deity, ritualistic sacrifice versus bowing down. What is the difference? Well, ritualistic sacrifice is done for some benefit in this world. And hopefully bowing down before the deity is done just because you love Krishna. Okay, very nice questions. I didn't see questions from everybody else. Yes.
So my follow-up question is, like, I see like deity worship Archana is recommended in all like manuals where we hear Navda Bhakti. Rup Goswami gave 5 prominent. This is also part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu where he recommended 3. So deity worship is that essential. And then I hear like sadhak need deity worship at the sadhaka stage, but at a siddh state they don't.
Oh, you have asked a very deep question. So that is true. It is true that deity worship is particularly needed in the beginning stage. That if we're going to say my house belongs to Krishna, it's nice to actually have a deity of Krishna in your house. And then you can say, see, my house belongs to Krishna. When I went to dinner at my granddaughter's yesterday, so my granddaughter and her husband were joking around with each other. This is my house. No, this is my house. Oh, it's my house. And then my daughter also lives there, and technically the lease is in her name. And so then they said, no, it's Champika's house. And so they're having this friendly, joking argument. And I said, it's Krishna's house. And then the little 3-year-old said, no, it's my house. So when you have the deity there, I said, actually it's Gaurnitai's house. So when you install the deity, then you can have a sense that this is Gaurnitai's house, or this is Krishna Balaram's house, or this is Radha Krishna's house, or whatever, whatever form of the Lord you're worshiping. This is their house. And I'm fixing up the house for them, and I'm paying the rent or the mortgage for the Lord. I mean, you really can think of it. I'm the servant of the Lord. I'm cleaning the Lord's house. I'm cooking for the Lord. It's very, very practical. Now, for a Siddha devotee, they always see the Lord everywhere. They don't need to have some focus like that, but often they do. I mean, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, all the Goswamis had a deity form that they worship. There's temples in Vrindavan for each of the deities of the Goswamis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for quite some time worshipped Govardhan Shila, and then he gave that Govardhan Shila to Raghunath Das Goswami. But we find that the Siddha devotees too often worship the deity. I mean, Madhavendra Puri was traveling without any worship, and then, of course, the Gopal deity asked him to worship him. So it's not that the Siddha devotees are required to worship the deity in order to see the Lord and focus their mind and remind themselves that everything belongs to Krishna, but they may enjoy doing that service for the deity.
And also the deity, after the neophyte stage, if they are very advanced stage, then they still has to show as themselves as neophyte, and they think themselves as neophyte as well. So
That is also true, but not always. Not always. We do see there are Siddha devotees in the Shastra and in our tradition who don't engage in deity worship. So we do see that. I mean, also keep in mind that any one of the 64 angas of bhakti can invoke the mercy of the Lord and bring us to prema. But deity worship is considered one of the 5 most potent. All right. So the nectar devotion, mellow, nectar, eternal ocean. And we are looking at chapters 9 through 12. By the way, we're going to end class a little early today because I have to take care of Tulsi between our 2 classes. So, okay, we've repeated this before. We'll repeat it again, that Rupa Goswami gives shastric evidences for all of his points, which shows that the nectar devotion is authorized scripture. The nectar devotion is not scripture in the sense of the Vedas that were the breathing of the Lord, but they're authorized scripture in the sense that Rupa Goswami is a leading follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they're also authorized scriptures in the sense that he's amply quoting from the scriptures. He's not just saying something on his own strength. So a little note here that there's a lot of the angas that may appear to be similar about singing and chanting. So 32 is about glorification of the Lord, 33 congregational chanting of name, qualities, and pastimes, 34 is japa, 63 is chanting of the name, congregational chanting of the name. And with hearing scripture, again, we also have some similarities. So 43 is about Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. 54 is about serving the scriptures. 64 is absorption in Krishna consciousness through hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's some subtle differences between these. Okay, chapter 9. Summary of chapter 9. So this is items 20 to 42. Now in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's not divided up into chapters like this. It's divided into waves. So all these chapters are in the same wave, but Srila Prabhupada divided them up into chapters. So emphasis on deity worship, chanting, and prayer. Okay, item 20. Very intolerant of blasphemy. Here's Ramachandra Puri blaspheming Lord Chaitanya. We should not be mellow and tolerant if someone's blaspheming Krishna or his devotees. If a person, after hearing blasphemous propaganda against the Lord and his devotees, does not go away from that place, he becomes bereft of all the effects of pious activities. Champa Gulata was telling me how much her Gurukul students like this picture, and she said after teaching this class, she was out in her garden and there were a bunch of frogs jumping out of her lotus pond, and she thought, oops, they must have heard blasphemy of a devotee, and now they're all leaving. And somebody who could read this, please.
In one of Lord Chaitanya's Shikshastika verses, it is stated, the devotee should be more tolerant than the tree and more submissive than the grass. He should offer all honor to others, but may not accept any honor for himself. In spite of Lord Chaitanya's being so humble and meek as a devotee, when he was informed about injuries inflicted on the body of Sri Nityananda, he immediately ran to the spot and wanted to kill the offenders, Jagai and Madhai. This behavior of Lord Chaitanya is very significant. It shows that a Vaishnava may be very tolerant and meek, foregoing everything for his personal honor, but when it is a question of the honor of Krishna or his devotee, he will not tolerate any insult.
Very nice. We tend to be the opposite. We tend to be silent and meek when other people are insulted, and we become like fire when we're insulted. So I want to reverse that. Okay. Wearing tilak. And here we have this nice quote. Persons who put tulsi beads on the neck, who have Vishnu tilak, make the world purified. Wherever they remain, that place is as good as Vaikuntha. Persons who are decorated with tilak or gopi chandan and who mark their bodies all over with the holy names of the Lord and on whose necks and breasts there are tulsi beads are never approached by the Yamadutas. I would say that this is like, the police officer has a badge and so the criminals run away. Now, if you just fake it, I don't think you get much benefit. Sometimes writing Hare Krishna on the body. I have a friend who likes to do this. Accepting flowers and garlands that have been offered to the deity and putting them on one's own body. By the way, I don't have it in the PowerPoint, but there's a wonderful quote from Uddhava in this regard in the 11th canto, how he conquers Maya by wearing the garlands and things that have been offered to the Lord. And Prabhupada says, even if one does not accept all the Vaishnava principles, but takes the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna, Krishna Prasadam, he'll gradually become qualified to rise to the platform of a Vaishnava. Of course, we didn't put a slide in here about this, but this is obviously very much related to Srila Prabhupada's mission of wide-scale prasadam distribution all over the world. One should learn to dance before the deity. Can somebody read this?
Dwaraka Mahatyam. A person who is in the jubilant spirit, who feels profound devotional ecstasy while dancing before me, and who manifests different features of bodily expression, can burn away all the accumulated sinful reactions he has stocked up for many, many thousands of years.
All right, so to bow down immediately upon seeing the deity or the spiritual master, and to stand up as soon as we go to the temple. So what do? Do we bow down or do we stand up? So again, what Srila Prabhupada would do when the curtains open, he would stand up and then he would stand up out of respect, and then he would bow down out of respect. Many times the curtains open, people just immediately bow down, but actually the system is one first stands up and then one bows. And Prabhupada would often wait for a few minutes between standing up and bowing. Following the procession, when the deities go on a stroll, this is of course the Mayapur elephant procession. When I visited Sri Rangam, they said that the deity went on procession about 340 days a year, and everybody would go on the procession with the deity. Visiting a Vishnu temple at least once or twice a day, obviously if it's possible, if there's one in your area. Circumambulate the temple building at least 3 times. So most temples have some facility for that. Outside, the circumambulation of the deities is inside the building. One should worship according to the regulative principles. So we shouldn't concoct our own method of worship, but we should worship according to the scriptures. Do some personal service for the deity. So if one is not sect initiated, one can still bring something personally to offer to the deities, a flower or something. To sing. And to perform Sankirtan. To chant. To offer prayers. So now we have a whole section about prayers and 3 different kinds of prayers. So there's Sampartanatmika prayers, which means very feelingly offering prayers. And there's some examples. This is a very famous one. Yuvati namita yuni, yunam cha yuvato yata, manobramate tadvan maname ramatam twayi. Just as the minds of young ladies take pleasure in thinking of young men, and the minds of young men take pleasure in thinking of young women, kindly let my mind take pleasure in you alone. So this is a general prayer that I want to love you with that spontaneity. Here's another prayer that Rupa Goswami has written. Krishna Deva Bhavantam Vande Manmanasa Madhukaram Arpaya Nijapada Pankajam Makrande. Krishna Deva, I offer this prayer. May my mind like a bee become offered at your feet, which are lotuses of nectar. Another example in reverence is Prasida Bhagavan. O Lord, be merciful to me. So these are some examples of the first type of prayer. Second type of prayer is Danya Bodhika. This is a prayer of humility. And here's one example. Matsamo nasti papatma na paradicha kastana parihare pilajyame kimbube purusotama. Or purusotama, there is no one as sinful and offensive as I am. How can I describe myself? I even feel ashamed to give up my sins. This is an example from Raghunath Goswami's Manashiksha. Yata dusta tvam me dayati shashyati. Oh goodness, I should know this. I haven't said this for too long. I'll sing it. Yata dusta tvam me davayati satasya pikripaya. Yata mayam premamritamapi dadachujvalamasho. Yata Shri Gandharva Bhajana Viraye Prerayatimam. Yata Goste Kaktva Giridharam Mihatvam Bhajamana. Even though I am a cheater, the Lord's mercy can drive away my inherent wicked nature, give me the glowing nectar of divine love, and inspire my heart with the process to worship Sri Gandharva. Therefore, O mind, with pleading words, you should worship Sri Giridhari here in Vrindavan. It's another example. Oh, my Lord, please protect me, who am surrendered unto you. I am the most fearful of this ocean of material existence, standing as I am in the mouth of death. Here's another one. Yoha mamastiyat kinchiri haloke pratrata tatsavam bhavato daiva charineshu samartham. Myself and whatever little I possess in this world and the next, all this I now offer unto your lotus feet. Third category of prayer is lalasamayi, desiring some perfectional stage. And Srila Prabhupada says, could someone read this, please?
Yes. When one realizes something of this constitutional position with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he understands his original position and wants to be reinstated in this position, either as a friend, servant, parent, or conjugal lover of Krishna. That is called lalasamai, or very eagerly desiring to go to one's natural position.
Thank you. Okay, can someone read this?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Yeah, this Lalasa-mayi stage of submission comes in the stage of perfect liberation, which is technically called Swarup Siddhi, when the living entity understands by perfect spiritual advancement and revelation his original relationship with the Lord.
Thank you. So here we have a picture of somebody cleaning a mirror, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, to reveal our real identity. Now, even though Prabhupada says that, we say such a prayer every day in every ISKCON temple, Tulsi. So the prayers that we say to Tulsi during Tulsi Arti are Lalasamayi prayers. They're prayers asking for our original position of service.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
Sorry. I just, this Lalasamai stage, like it's just in your presentation, I saw that it's a perfect liberation, right? It comes at perfect liberation stage. So all the anarthas has to be vanquished before the stage.
Well, this is very much related to what we'll discuss in our second class today about Raganuga sadhana bhakti, that Prabhupada would use these words like perfect liberation, and we're really talking about the majority of anarthas. And when one starts to realize one's relationship with Krishna, it's not that these prayers can only be offered in prema bhakti. I mean, otherwise, why are we singing the Tulsi prayer, which is a Lalasamayi prayer? That's what it is. The Tulsi Arti prayer that's sung every day in every ISKCON temple that Srila Prabhupada gave us is the Lalasamayi prayer. Srupa Goswami gives an example of Vrindavan and an example of Vaikuntha. Example from Vrindavan is, O lotus-eyed Lord, when will I dance on the bank of the Yamuna with tears in my eyes while singing your names? This is a Lalasamayi prayer from someone in the mood of Vrindavan, and for someone in the mood of Vaikuntha, the example that Rupa Goswami gives is, O Master of the Universe, when will you, accompanied by Lakshmi, say with a deep voice to me, eager to serve you with chamara, please come here. And we have some other examples. These are also Lalasamayi songs that we sing. So if someone could read this.
Narottam Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. By the power of those lotus feet, my activities will become favorable to devotion. I will achieve spiritual perfection. And with these two eyes, I shall be able to actually see. Both days and night, the flood of exquisite beauty of Sri Rupa Manjari's divine lotus feet will shine like the brilliant full moon upon the lotus feet of my heart, soothing my afflicted soul.
Okay, and here's another example of another Lala Samayi song that we sing. If somebody could read this, please.
Narottama Das, Radha Krishna Pranamora. In a forest of small Kadamba trees on the bank of the Yamuna, I will seat the divine couple on a throne made of brilliant jewels. I will anoint their dark and fair forms with sandalwood paste scented with chuya, and I will fill them with the chamara whisk. Oh, when will I behold their moon-like faces? After stringing together garlands of malati flowers, I will place them around their necks, and I will offer tambula scented with camphor to their lotus mouths.
This is another Lala Samayi song that we do sing in ISKCON. And this is something Prabhupada writes in this connection, if somebody could read this.
In other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn this small technique, and he should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called laulyam, and such tears are the price for the highest perfection.
Thank you. Now, that doesn't mean that we should learn this as a theatrical technique. In other words, we should learn the spiritual technique of actually caring so much that we cry. Okay, somebody could read this.
If one develops this laulyam or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. Otherwise, there is no material calculation for the value of the ticket by which one can enter the kingdom of God. The only price for such entrance is this laulyam, Lala Samayi, or desire and great eagerness.
Thank you. All right, so we went over the three kinds of prayers that we could say that in our own prayers, or we can also have these three kinds of prayers where we're reciting notable prayers. And so we're going to look at some examples of notable prayers. So first of all, Rupa Goswami quotes from the Skanda Purana that can someone read this?
In the Skanda Purana, the glories of these prayers are stated as follows. Devotees whose tongues are decorated always with prayers to Lord Krishna are always given respect even by the great saintly persons and sages. And such devotees are actually worshipable by the demigods.
Okay. And somebody could read this next one.
Narasimha Purana is stated, any person who comes before the deity of the Lord Krishna and begins to chant different prayers is immediately relieved from all the reactions of sinful activities and becomes eligible without any doubt to enter into the Vaikuntha Loka.
Thank you. So let's look at some notable prayers. We have Arjuna's prayers in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita to the universal form. We have the prayers of Lord Shiva in the 4th canto that he teaches the Prachetas. We have the prayers of Gajendra in the 8th canto. We have the prayers of Queen Kunti in the 1st canto. We have the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. Prabhupada included this prayer in one of his poems when he came to America. We have the prayer the prayers at the end of the Ishopanishad. And there are many, many, many examples. We're just giving a few. And then they are the prayers of our Gaudiya Acharyas. And I find it interesting here, Prabhupada in this letter says that these prayers are approved in any language. In other words, we can sing these prayers in the original Sanskrit or Bengali. We can also sing them in English. Okay. Item 37 is one must taste Mahaprasadam. One must drink the Charanamrita. One must smell the incense and flowers offered to the deities. One must touch the lotus feet of the deity. And Prabhupada explains this, if somebody could read this.
Only one who is properly initiated, who is properly following the rules and regulations, can enter and touch the deity, not all. And one who touches the body of the deity, following such regulative principles, is immediately delivered from the contamination of material sins, and all of his desires become fulfilled without delay.
Wow. Seeing the deity with great devotion. So not just seeing the deity efficiently. Offering arati. Okay, going on to chapter 10. And again, Srila Prabhupada was the one who broke these up into these chapters. So this is for items 43 through 46, with emphasis on hearing and remembering. So hearing about the Lord and his pastimes from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar books. And Srila Prabhupada here is revealing something of his mission. If somebody could read this.
In this age, it is very difficult to follow thoroughly the regulative principles and studies of the Vedas, which were formally recommended. However, if one gives oral reception to the sound vibrated by great devotees and acharyas, that alone will give him relief from all material contamination.
So this is very much related to Prabhupada's mission to widely distribute his books. One must pray to the deity for his mercy. And this is the mood of praying for mercy. Very famous verse by Lord Brahma. Someone could read this.
My dear Lord, any person who is constantly awaiting your
Your sound went out. Somebody else?
My dear Lord, any person who is constantly awaiting your causeless mercy to be bestowed upon him, and who gives on suffering the resultant actions of his past misdeeds, offering you respectful obeisances from the core of his heart, is surely eligible to become liberated, for it has become his rightful claim.
Very, very important verse. You should remember the deity. And Prabhupada says, if one establishes in his mind his continuous relationship with Krishna, this relationship is called remembrance. We should meditate upon the deity. So what is the difference here? So to meditate means to engage the mind thinking of the form of the Lord, the qualities of the Lord, the activities of the Lord, and the service of the Lord. So remembrance is general, meditation is more specific, and meditation has 4 things. So remembrance is I'm remembering Krishna in a general way. Meditation as there's meditation on Krishna's form, meditation on Krishna's qualities, meditation on Krishna's activities, and meditation on serving Krishna. And Rupa Goswami gives scriptural evidence for each of these. We're going to particularly look at an example of meditating on service. Now, this is a very important story. It's from the Brahma-vaivarta Purana of a very poor Brahmana. And he heard that he could get the same result by meditation as by actual service. So he meditated every day on getting water from the Yamuna and the Ganga in golden pots and dressing the deity and so forth. And then at one point when he was meditating, he did this for many, many years every day. And at one point when he meditated on cooking sweet rice, and he wasn't sure if the sweet rice was the right temperature, so he touched it in his meditation, and then his physical finger became burnt. At which point Lord Narayan started laughing, and Lakshmi in Vaikuntha, and Lakshmi said, "Why are you laughing?" And the Lord then sent an airplane to bring the Brahmana back to Vaikuntha. There's a very, very famous story from South India in regard to Lord Shiva, where there was one very poor Brahmana who was meditating on building a temple for Lord Shiva. And he did this again every day for years, gradually building the temple. In a nearby village, a great king was physically building a temple. And so it came time to install the deity of Lord Shiva in the deity of the king, in the temple of the king. And then the king had a dream where Lord Shiva appeared before him and said, "You can't install me in your temple because first I'm going to the other temple. You'll have to install me after I go to the other temple." The king was like, "What temple? What temple?" And so he traveled with his retinue to the nearby village, and he was asking everybody, "Who's building a temple? I don't see any temple being built." Finally, he found this one Brahmana who revealed to him that he had been building a temple every day in his mind.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
This regarding meditation, the Brahmana was meditating with all thinking about Krishna. Then after going to the Vaikuntha, he does the same service as he meditated here in the earth. Right?
Well, that's interesting, probably. I mean, we've read in Nectar of Instruction that one will do whatever service in the spiritual world one meditates on. Of course, that's in the stage of realizing as one's sort of siddhi. But that may be. That may very well be. Prabhupada in Geneva said that while chanting Hare Krishna, we can meditate like this Brahmin did on doing deity service. He talked about this. He said, while chanting Hare Krishna, we can meditate on having a diamond throne in our heart and sitting Krishna upon the throne and bathing him with Ganga and Jamuna water and dressing him and ornamenting him. So Prabhupada did talk about this as a meditation while chanting Hare Krishna. Prabhupada writes, we can understand that things offered by the devotees, even in meditation, are accepted by the Lord. There's a number of examples of this in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nakul Brahmachari, I think his name was, who meditated on building a road for Lord Chaitanya. I think it was him. Can't remember. And then there was other who's meditated on offering food to the Lord. So there's a number of instances specifically of this in Nectar Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay, chapter 11. So here we have items 47 through 53 on servitude, friendship, and surrender. So to render some voluntary service, it's important to be voluntary. All right, so here we have the varieties of service. So if one is not trying to please the Lord, but offers Krishna the results of activities, that's bhakti, but it's not pure bhakti, it's karma yoga. So that's one subcategory of rendering service. And Prabhupada also says that some of the activities of Varnasrama contain elements that are identical to those of bhakti. Just like in Varnasrama, a Brahmana worships the deity, and in bhakti, you worship the deity. So if somebody is in Varnashram and they're offering that Varnashram activities to Krishna as a service, they'll gradually get purified because they're trying to offer to Krishna, and they'll end up doing some of the things of bhakti. Then there's the category of somebody who wants to please the Lord, but they're still addicted to sense gratification. They can offer the results of their activity as a gradual process of pure bhakti. So these are the subcategories of service. One should think of the Lord as one's friend, and here there's two main categories. We should notice this is in sadhana bhakti. We're not talking about like being a cowherd boy here. That's a different thing. This is in the 64 angas for sadhana bhakti, and this is in the section of the Nectar Devotion on Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. So this is certainly also applicable to someone in Vaidhi sadhana. Okay, so there's two kinds of friendship, Vishvasa and Mitra. So Vishvasa means the Lord is my friend and protector. Mitra is I am the Lord's friend. So Vishvasa is the Lord is my friend. Mitra is I am the Lord's friend. Vishvasa is the Lord is taking care of me. Mitra is I'm taking care of the Lord. Yeah?
Mother, which one of this is higher?
Not like that. They're just two varieties. One is not given as higher than the other. Good question, and we'll look at that at the end of this friendship section. So Vishvasa is strong faith or confidence that the Lord is one's benefactor. So Shraddha and Vishvasa are synonyms. So Vishvasa here is a practice for bringing about Shraddha, and it is the result of Shraddha. So it's a practice of bhakti that brings us faith, and it also is a symptom of having faith. So this practice, they have confidence in devotional service with the faith that I'll achieve the platform of transcendental life. If I follow bhakti, I know I will attain perfection. That faith. That's Vishvasa. I know Krishna's going to take care of me. And we have examples of Draupadi given by Rupa Goswami. That I maintain my life knowing that you've promised that the devotees won't perish. And again, Draupadi, I simply remember your promise and thus I live in all states of life. I know you're going to protect me. You're going to maintain me no matter what's happening. And only Krishna is my protector. I'm not going to give up the shelter of his lotus feet. Even if I was given in exchange ruling the whole universe or being a demigod. I'm still, if that's the requirement, I have to give up Krishna's lotus feet, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so Vishvasa is, the Lord is my benefactor and friend, my only shelter. From him I get maintenance and protection. I take solace in his promise of protection in all difficulties, and I will not give up his shelter for any material opulence. Now let's look at Mitra. This is to become a well-wisher of the Lord. So this is when we're a preacher, when we're a book distributor. Anyone who's preaching the confidential message of the Gita to the people in general is so dear to Krishna that no one can be equal to him in human society. I'm trying to do good for the Lord. So Vishvasa is I'm thinking that the Lord's doing good for me. Mitra is I'm trying to do good for the Lord. So wanting to serve the Lord personally and maybe residing in a temple for that purpose. I want to do something for him. Let me be the Lord's well-wisher. And this sometimes one may become casual and lie down in the temple, although Prabhupada says that lying down in the temple out of friendship is in Raganuga, sadhana, but feelings that I am the Lord's friend can be in both Raganuga sadhana and Vaidhi sadhana. If you're thinking, I'm distributing books because I'm the Lord's friend, I care about him. So Mitra is I'm the well-wisher of the Lord. Like him, I want to help others and relieve their distress. I especially show my friendship with the Lord by teaching others of his glories and the secret of surrender to him. I want to relieve the Lord of any inconvenience out of friendship. I may also in friendship see the Lord in intimacy with informality. Okay?
Something.
Yes.
Sometimes devotees used to sleep in the temple because they wanted to protect the deities. So that would be counted in Mitra.
Yes, that's part of Mitra, yes. Excellent. Yes, definitely. One should offer everything to the Lord. So the Sanskrit for this anga is Atmanivedanam. So this is considering oneself the possession of the Lord. This is actually quite similar to Vishvasa. This is Atmanivedanam, so giving oneself to the Lord. And self can be the soul, the mind, or the body. So full Atmanivedanam means I give the Lord my body, my mind, and myself. So offering the body. So can someone read this?
Offering the body as Atma is illustrated in Bhakti Viveka. Just as one does not worry about an animal that has been sold, one should offer this body to the Lord and be disinterested in its maintenance. In other words, one should not bother about his personal or family maintenance or sustenance. If one is actually surrendered in body and soul, he should always remember that his only concern is to be engaged in the service of the Lord.
Now, that doesn't mean that you don't eat, and it doesn't mean that you don't go to work, but it means you're doing that in the role of a servant. You're not taking the mood that I am maintaining my body, I am maintaining my family. Krishna's maintaining my body, Krishna's maintaining my family, and whatever I do is as a servant. But there's this mood that I'm totally, absolutely dependent. I mean, we are all totally, absolutely dependent, but it's a mood of total dependence on Krishna for the maintenance of the body.
Mother?
Yes.
How different is this one from Karma Yoga? Just a few slides back, you were saying that offering the fruits to the Lord is considered to be not a pure form of bhakti, but it
Karma
is.
Yoga is in the mood of I want my own liberation. Bhakti Yoga is in the mood of just I want to make Krishna happy.
Okay.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for asking that. And okay, somebody who could read this.
Because he has offered his because he has offered his body to the Lord, he gives up all activities for pleasure in this life and the next, which nourishes his body and things related to that body. The Lord then thinks, I desire to make him special. He then attains freedom from death, amritatvam, and attains similarly to me, atma bhuyaya. This means that he attains liberation in the form of attaining his swarupa and sarshti powers like those of the Lords.
So when we want to just use our body for pleasing the Lord gives us everything. Okay, and here we have surrender of the mind. Somebody could read this.
Surrender of self as mind. My mind, my household affairs, my body, whatever is in my possession, my dear Lord, I offer to you for your service. Now you can do with them as you like. You are the supreme possessor of everything. So if you like, you can kill me. Or if you like, you can give me protection. All authority belongs to you. I have nothing to claim as my own.
Bhaktivinoda has a whole series of songs in this mood. And what about surrender of self as soul? Someone could read this.
Sri Yamunacharya, in his prayers to the Lord, has expressed a similar idea in the following words. My dear Lord, I may be living within some body as a human being or as a demigod, but whatever mode of life, I do not mind, because these bodies are simply byproducts of the three modes of material nature. And I, who am in possession of these bodies, am surrendering myself unto you.
So surrender of the self as soul means you can put me in any body, you can reincarnate me in any body, you can take me back to God or whatever you want to do with me. And Rupa Goswami says that this Atmanivedanam is very difficult to do. So it can be done even by beginners in bhakti. You don't have to be a pure devotee to do it. You don't have to be in bhava. It can also be mixed with bhava, and he gives the example of Rukmini and of King Ambarish. But he says this Atmanivedanam is very rarely done because it's very difficult. Okay, offering Krishna.
So if it is so difficult, how even a beginner can do it?
They can, but it's difficult. It's not difficult because it requires being advanced. It's just difficult.
Mother?
Yes.
When it comes to Atmanivedanam, usually the example that was being always given is Bali Maharaj, right?
Yes. Yes.
Actually, I just want to ask, clarify some things. Like this complete self-surrender means, like while we are practicing the bhakti, at any stage we can surrender. That means the mood. Say, for example, if I am getting some problem I cannot solve by myself, I should not think I'm going to solve my problem. I just leave it to Krishna just like that, and then do whatever it happens. Is it like that? It
Well, it's
comes
not
in-
that you don't do anything, but you're doing everything in the mood of a servant. I'm going to feed my body, but it's up to Krishna if he maintains me or not. And I'm not going to have, material attachment and detachment. I'm just going to think about Krishna's pleasure for my body, for my mind, and for my very self. All right, we need to go on.
What it means to offer Atma Nivedanam with an emotional feeling, mixed
That's
with
mind.
emotions. What?
That's mind.
The mind.
That's Atmanivedana of mind. I'm sorry, I have to go on. I do have a presentation, like an hour and a half presentation on surrender that you can find on YouTube, where I have these same slides and a lot more. I go into much more depth. I don't have time to do that today. My apologies. So if you want to go deeper, I have given a presentation just on, I have one on friendship and I have one on prayer. So these slides are taken from those. So I have one on prayer, one on friendship, and one on surrender, and they're all available on YouTube. So offering Krishna something that we really like, taking risks, and perform all endeavors for Krishna's benefit. Now this I consider a very, very, very important verse. Somebody could read this.
Not only should a devotee engage himself in the prescribed duties of devotional service, which are mentioned in the revealed scriptures, but he should also perform the duties of his practical life in Krishna consciousness. For example, a devotee who has a great establishment or factory may offer the fruits of such a material possession for the service of the Lord.
Okay, so when we're saying here, perform all endeavors for Krishna's benefit, that also applies to our occupation in the world. All right, now we have another anga that deals with surrender. In every condition, one should be a surrendered soul. The Sanskrit for this is Sharanapati. So this is a different flavor than Atmanivedanam, but it's also about surrender.
I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes.
So it's regarding the previous slide where we see. So we should use our factories and all our establishment as much as possible, but then there should not be conflicting interest.
Like
we cannot use, for instance, if I have, say, a fleet of taxis, I may subsidize it, but I may not, if there are competing rates, we cannot use that. And I mean, how you comment on that?
competing
When people
rates.
start using their resources, in the name of Krishna services, but to benefit themselves.
Well, that can be done even if you're just cooking in the temple or offering artik in the temple, that we can have a mood of benefiting ourselves rather than a mood of benefiting Krishna.
Yes, exactly.
But my mood, if I'm running a taxi service, I can make sure that my work is ethical. I can make sure I'm giving to charity. I can have a mood of treating everybody the way that Krishna wants me to treat them. I see them all as Krishna's parts and parcels. I see the taxis as belonging to Krishna. I use some of the money in charity that's going to benefit Krishna or in a way that's going to please Krishna. I make sure that I'm offering something of real value to the society. So there's so many ways that I can do that work as service.
I'm drawing parallels, in one of your answer to a question in previous classes, you made a very strong point, and it made things clear to me. Like you mentioned, people come join ISKCON with different consciousness, with different motivations.
That's
Like
it.
some want to just come to Western countries.
Yes,
Some
yes.
want to, enjoy the power which comes to this. And then there are some who are working for self-realization.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where I was drawing parallels. Like,
Yes, that is very true. Yes. Yes. Very nice. Okay. Sharanapati. Sharanapati, this term is also used very much in the Sri Sampradaya. So here we're looking at body, mind, and words. This is a little different than Atmanivedanam. It's a little different. So a person who has surrendered himself to you, who is in firm conviction he is yours, and who acts that way by his body, mind, and words can actually relish transcendental bliss.
Still in chapter 11.
What?
Which chapter are we?
I don't know, Mahalakshmi. I could figure that out in a minute, but then you'll have to look at something strange here. We are in chapter 11, yes. Okay, so Lord Nrsingadev saying, anyone who prays unto me and takes shelter of me becomes my ward, and I protect him. And the devotees thinking, if Krishna likes, he may keep the devotee in a poverty-stricken condition, he may keep me in an opulent position. The devotee is not concerned, he's simply concerned about satisfying Krishna. So what's the difference between Atmanivedanam, which was item 49, and Sharanapati, which is item 42? So Atmanivedanam is, I'm giving everything to you, you can do with me whatever you like. Sharanapati is, I have faith that you're taking care of me. So Atmanivedanam, Rupa Goswami says, is very rare. Sharanapati, many people, I think it's much more accessible. Sharanapati is something that you see a lot in many, many religious systems, that I have faith, Krishna, that you're taking care of me. I'm living with faith that you're taking care of me, that you're my maintainer, you're my protector, you're my provider. Atmanivedanam is more, you can do with me whatever you like. You can do with my body whatever you like. You can do with my mind whatever you like. You can do with me whatever you like. And Sharanapati is, I accept that you're my maintainer. So we want to say Sharanapati is much easier for most people to do than Atmanivedanam. However, on highest levels, who do I have here? Okay, on the highest levels of bhakti, it may be reversed. So those who are in a parental mood, they're not thinking Krishna's my maintainer, they're thinking I'm Krishna's maintainer. So for those in parental rasa, they wouldn't relate to Sharanapati. Of course, Krishna is always maintaining them too, but their mood is more, I'm Krishna's shelter. So those in parental rasa might find Atmanivedanam easier than Sharanapati. Okay, putting water on the tulsi tree. And remember, item 10 was also about these. So item 10 was about the attitude, and 53 is physical acts. And then we have these benedictions by seeing, by praying to, by bowing before, by hearing about, by serving. Tulsi, there's always auspiciousness. Okay, chapter 12. And now we're going to items 54 to 64, 5 of which are the most potent forms of devotional service. So to regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and similar literature, live in a sacred place like Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka, offer services to the Vaishnavas, and arrange devotional service according to one's means. So if we're poor, we can just give Krishna a little water, but if we're a billionaire, we should build Krishna a temple. Special services in Kartik. And Jiva Goswami says that even if we observe Kartik in Vrindavan without devotion, Krishna will give us his personal service. Special service on Janmashtami. Whatever we do for the deity, to do with great care and devotion, particularly relishing Bhagavatam among devotees and not outsiders. That doesn't mean we can't preach to outsiders. association with devotees who are more advanced. Again, we can associate with all kinds of devotees and help them, but especially to associate with those who are more advanced. If everyone only associated with those who are more advanced, then it wouldn't be possible for anyone to associate with people who are more advanced, if you understand the logic of that. So if everyone said, I'm only going to associate with people who are more advanced, then there would be no devotee association at all, because no advanced devotee would ever associate with those who were less advanced. And so the less advanced people couldn't associate with those who were more advanced. One should chant the holy name of the Lord, live in the jurisdiction of Mathura. So we find this has been repeated. Item 7, living in a sacred place, like Dwarka or Vrindavan. Item 48, going to the temple of Vishnu. Item 55, live in a sacred place, like Mathura, Vrindavan, or Dwarka. Item 64, live in the jurisdiction of Mathura. So this shows that it's important. So 7 is visiting, 48 is brief visit, 55 is exclusively about Mathura and Vrindavan and is the same as 64. And the end of this chapter summarizes the 5 most important items of devotional service, which we will discuss more in the next chapter. Okay, I do need to end this class a little early so that I can actually do some things for Tulsi, but I can have like 5 minutes if anyone has any further questions. Does anyone else have any questions? I know that we did a lot here. And
I just feel, Mother, it is like you're asking to choose in the, like having the best cows, giving the best milk. Which one is the better one? It's like everything is the best and everything is the cream. Okay, you want to look at this? Then something is coming up. Everything is like, too high. That's what I feel.
Too high?
Yes, too high in the sense, in terms of devotional service. Even to pick something is becoming difficult.
Well, pick something.
Well, the moment I'm seeing at Sharanagati, something comes up, again Atmanivedanam, and then again it says about Dham, and so forth. It's like, everywhere now it is like, okay, where do I go? Or just sit here.
Well, what's very nice, which we'll explain, I think, in the next class, that even one of these items will give success and we perform as many as we can. So it's not necessary that you have to do all of them.
Prabhu, not relevant, but today is Mother's Day, so if you can speak in the second half, a few lines, that will be very important.
I doubt if I'll have time in the second half, but we can just remember that Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita also says that he is the mother. And Krishna also says that austerities of the body, that if you remember from Bhagavad Gita, austerities of the body are to worship superiors like the father and mother. So giving proper regard to our mother will help us advance in Krishna consciousness. I mean, some of us, if we do it to please Krishna, if we say, well, Krishna, you want me to worship my father and mother. Of course, how we're going to do that is going to depend on who our mother is.
Yeah.
And who we are, exactly how we're going to do that. So, I mean, for me, my mother has passed away, my stepmother has passed away, my mother-in-law has passed away. Both my older sisters have passed away. So my sisters were much older than I am, and so they were much more like aunties to me than like sisters. They were kind of surrogate mothers. So, but I don't really have anybody on this planet anymore who I could see as my mother like that. So for me, there's not much I can do. I can just kind of remember my mother and be thankful to her. And that's about it. Of course, Prabhupada says the closest thing to spiritual love is the love of a mother. So we can understand something about pure devotion by looking at the love of a mother. And Prabhupada also says that when we chant Hare Krishna, that we should chant like a child crying for the mother. So this is
So, is there a reason, like, in our Vedic system, we hear like Yashodanandan or Devaki Nandan and, Kunti Putra Arjun? Is there any relevance? Because the mothers are so glorified in our Vedic scriptures. Like their sons are like, glorified by the names of their mothers.
sometimes by the names of the father, sometimes by the names of the mother. I mean, I think it's interesting that like sometimes the men are addressed in relationship to their wives, right? We have, what do you call it? Sitapati, Advaitacharya is called Sitapati. So it's very interesting to me. So the children are addressed in terms of their parents. I mean, this was done in all traditional societies. And if you think about even a lot of the surnames we have in the West, they'll often be so-and-so's son, right? John's son, Smith's son, Abram's son. That's actually quite common. Right, isn't it?
Yes, I agree.
So to address somebody by their parent's name, either their mother or father, it used to be quite a common thing in society. It was one of the ways you identified people. Like I know in, in the Bible and in Jewish culture, everybody was addressed like that. Abraham, son of Michael, that was how you talked about people. And again, we do that with surnames. Some of our surnames are indicative of occupations and some of ancestry. All right, I need to go right now. We will resume at our usual time. So you're going to have a 20-minute. Hare Krishna. Hope you all had a good break. Okay. So now we are going on to 13 through 16. So please put your questions for 13 through 16 in the chat. Right. Okay, we have some really good questions here. One cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam until one rejects Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Does this mean if I'm reading with all the above qualities, all I get is book knowledge but not devotion? No. There's benefit even in the beginning. So therefore we say, whether you have sarva kama, moksha kama, or akarma, if you approach Krishna, you get all benefit. But best to approach Krishna with just a desire to serve him. All right, another nice question about Varnasrama Dharma, and there's quite a lot in Nectar Devotion, this first section about Varnashram. You say, as grahastas, we follow Varnashram Dharma. How do we see this? Well, we don't have to. We could, even in the grahasta ashram, we could simply say, I'm doing everything for Krishna. We don't have to. I was just hearing Prabhupada in a lecture on Nectar Devotion this morning, saying we should work without upadis, right? We're learning that verse, Sarvapadi Vinirmuktan Tapartena Nirmala. Instead of, I'm doing this because I'm the husband. I'm doing this because I'm Krishna's servant, and Krishna's giving me this wife to take care of. Instead of, I'm doing this because I'm a banker, I'm doing this because I'm Krishna's servant. He's given me ability in banking, and I'm using that for his glory. But just following Varnashram Dharma means that you're like a pious person in the world. And Krishna's pleased if we're pious, but that's not the point. 1 second, I have to answer something here. Sorry. Thank you for your patience with that. Okay, chapter 14. We're using many machines for advancement. Yes.
I have this question on Varnasrama Dharma. Like devotees in ISKCON, particularly, they chant and offer everything and then go for work and come back. But for a householder to be always engaged in 24/7 in thinking or remembering of the Lord, how it is, should we have to progress from grahastha ashram dharma to vanaprastha? And because some of the
No, Bhakti Vinod writes all these songs in the grahastha ashram of how he sees his home and his family, everything as belonging to Krishna. Right, we talked about that. The deity, my house belongs to the deity. My house, this is Gaunitai's house. It's Radha Krishna's house. It's Jagannath's house. It's Govardhan's house. I'm the servant.
So till death, we can be in grahastha ashram life and do all these things. That means, right?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, I like this question. We are using many machines for advancement of our present Krishna consciousness movement. The more advancement in science and technology is becoming harmful to the environment as causing diseases. Will it not affect our degree of Krishna consciousness indirectly? Initially, it is fine, but for long-term advancement, will it not affect? Srila Prabhupada didn't want us to artificially give up the things of this world, and at the same time, he wanted us as far as possible to live simply. So how to balance that depends on what our service is. You know, I may have a service where I use these things in my, like I'm using this computer so many.
The reason I asked this question is because recently I got an invitation for COVID vaccination. I was really confused whether to put or not. It's not been trialed properly. Now I'm just engaged in that instead of reading or engaging in Krishna's service. Then in that case, I'm just not thinking of Krishna,
Well, why not make that decision thinking about Krishna? Why not, I think that's an individual decision for each of us. That's not something that I can tell you what to do or you can tell me what to do. But take it to Krishna, take it to your deity, your favorite deity, and say, my dear Lord, I'm going to do a little Atmanivedanam with my body. My body belongs to you. You're the owner of my body. What do you want me to do with it? Please make it clear. And just ask the Lord to make it clear for you what you should do. And then let go. A very good friend of mine, many years ago, one of my god sisters in this community, Guru Bhakta, she said to me many years ago, she said, go through the doors Krishna opens, don't go through the ones he closes, and don't try to push open a closed door. So, take it to Krishna, say, my dear Lord, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. This body is yours. You please reveal to me. And you open the doors I should go to and close the doors I shouldn't go through, and I will follow your lead. Now, sometimes Krishna may just say, wait. Sometimes he doesn't open any doors or close any doors. He just says, wait. That's also another answer. Sometimes the answer is to wait. But these are very personal decisions. Just like some people who have cancer take chemotherapy and radiation, and some people who have cancer do nothing and just die, and some people who have cancer take natural medicines. I mean, that's a personal decision. But that you should work out with Krishna. And that answer will be different for each person. It's not that your answer is right for me and my answer is right for you.
Yeah.
Is that right? But if we're in so much anxiety about, you know, some virus or so much an anxiety about a vaccine, we forget Krishna. What's the use of that? What's the point of that? There's always going to be something. And after this virus is gone and whatever, then there'll be something else that we can worry about instead of Krishna.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Like when Donald Trump was president here, so, you know, everybody was yelling and screaming about that. And now that he's not president anymore, everyone's yelling and screaming about a vaccine. And after that's done, everybody will be yelling and screaming about something else. Chapter 16, is Madhurya Ras possible only by deity worship of Radha Krishna in the temple? No. Not many people have access to deity worship. Simply by hearing the pastimes of Radha Krishna during our daily devotional service, is it possible to develop that rasa? Yes. Yes, definitely. Your rasa is who you are. So any of the processes of bhakti can surface it. Superficially, it seems that the gopis are attracted to Krishna on grounds of sex. Yes, Prabhupada says that. How to convince people that the relationship between Radha and Krishna is not on the grounds of sex? Give them Srila Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's expert at presenting how these are not mundane relationships. It's one of Srila Prabhupada's expertise. Give them Prabhupada.
But
How
you know,
one
Mataji,
Yeah.
when I give the books to them, like even in my relatives, then they are asking why he has written like this, like that. It's because in India it's so much conserved and so many things are directly put in Prabhupada's purport, and as well as I can see in translation as well, but they are not able to digest those things, you know.
Well, then they have you. Now that you're going to be a Bhakti Shastri, you should be able to explain it to them. You'll get your certificate and you'll say, I am now Bhakti Shastri and I can explain it to you. I'm sure you can do it. They don't have material bodies. They're not engaged in some kind of, you know, reproductive fluid transmission going on. It's not what's happening. It's what they're doing is what everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people like to pretend sex is. You know, and there's some, 1 second. There's some element of that. Thank you. Hare Krishna. There's some element of that even in our material relationships, right? When a husband and wife are having their sexual relationship, it's also building their love and affection for each other. It's not just a physical act. So hopefully, so that's our idea, is that it's an expression of love. But with Krishna and the gopis, it's actually an expression of love only. It's what we wish it was. You know, we may get a little bit here and there, but it's for them, that's completely, it's just an expression. It's just a union of love. How can one follow in the footsteps of the gopis? We will be discussing that. Is following the footsteps of previous acharyas considering as following the footsteps of the gopis? No. Within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, two division, executive and effective. Is bhava or ecstasy come under regulated sadhana or spontaneous sadhana? It's not regulated sadhana, and we will be discussing that. And if I don't explain it properly, then ask me again. Okay, I see I missed some. Is the duty of every householder to install deities and to begin the process of worshiping? Can this be done even if not everyone at home are following the regulative principles? That is a very interesting question. It probably depends, because it's an offense to have like the cooking scene by a dog. Maybe just put a picture on your altar. It depends what's going on in the house. If Varna and Ashram does not apply to those who have not developed Krishna consciousness, why do we give so much importance to the different Varnas and Ashrams? They're a support system.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any difference between worshiping the offering to the prasada and the offering to a deity or to a picture of the deity?
Although in one sense the deity can also appear in a painting, and you could install a painting and do regular worship to the painting as for a deity. In many cases, we don't do that. It's more informal. A devotee who's actually advanced in Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, should not manifest himself. Here, what does it mean he should not manifest himself? It means he keeps his relationship, his intimate relationship with Krishna, not for general display. Even in this world, civilized people, they don't display their intimate relationships publicly. So, in other words, it's not that one goes around advertising, I'm an advanced devotee. That's not good form. It's not like a title you get, you know. Advanced devotee title. So, Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu. And we're doing 13 through 16. Okay, summary of chapter 13. So chapter 13 is going through the 5 items that were at the end of chapter 12, but in more depth. And these are the most potent. So we had the first 3 items of the 64 were the most important, right? So the first 20 were the most important. Of that first 20, the first 10 were to-dos, second 20 not to-dos. The first 3 of the first 10 were the most important. Taking shelter of a guru, taking initiation, following the guru's instructions. But then we have the repetition of these 5 throughout the 64 in somewhat different flavors, and they're also mentioned at the end. And these are the most powerful, they're the most effective. Worshipping the deity, hearing Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, chanting the holy name, and living in Mathura. So why are they called the most potent? Because they're going to, more than any other anga, they're going to bring out bhava and prema. And any of the 64 items can. You smell the incense offered to the deity, following the procession, bowing down, any of those can. They're all powerful enough to it. Rupa Goswami has given Shastric evidence for each of the 64 angas. Still, we can say these 5 are the most powerful. And here we see Srila Prabhupada's expertise. Of course, this is related to Srila Prabhupada's mission, that he built ISKCON around these 5. Lavish deity worship, daily classes in the Bhagavatam, association of devotees, having Nam Sankirtan morning and evening in the temples and out on the street, and yearly festivals in Mayapur and Vrindavan. So Prabhupada particularly established ISKCON with these 5 most potent. I mean, most of the 64 angas are also in ISKCON, but we can kind of see that the heart of Srila Prabhupada's regular program is in these 5 most potent. So we have deity worship. Somebody could read this?
Yes. Regarding worship of the form of the Lord or deity, Rupa Goswami has written the following verse. My dear friend, if you still have any desire to enjoy the company of your friends within the material world, then don't look upon the form of Krishna, who is standing on the bank of Keshi Ghat, a bathing place in Vrindavan. He is known as Govinda, and his eyes are very enchanting. He is playing upon his flute, and on his head there is a peacock feather, and his whole body is illuminated by the moonlight in the sky.
But don't look at him. Don't look at him. You may be sorry. If you look at him, you won't be able to go back to this world. But oh, he's beautiful. But don't look at him. Don't look at him. So here we have Prabhupada's mission. If somebody could read this, please.
The purport of this verse is that if someone becomes attached to the Srimurti or the deity of Krishna by worshipping at home, then he will forget his relationship of so-called friendship, love, and society. Thus, it is the duty of every householder to install deities of the Lord at home and to begin the process of worshipping along with all his family members. This will save everyone from such unwanted activities as going to clubs, cinemas, and dancing parties, and smoking, drinking, etc. All such nonsense will be forgotten if one stresses the worship of the deities at home.
Very nice. So this is definitely part of Srila Prabhupada's mission, that in every home will be established as belonging to Krishna. Now, hearing the scriptures, particularly Srimad Bhagavatam, from devotees. Okay, if someone could read this.
Rupa Goswami further writes, "My dear foolish friend, I think that you have already heard some of the auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam, which decries seeking the results of fruitive activities, economic development, and liberation. I think that now it is certain that gradually the verses of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describing the pastimes of the Lord will enter your ears and go into your heart."
And Prabhupada writes something very interesting, which he writes in many places, that one should not try to understand the topics of the 10th canto, such as the Rasa Lila, unless he has spontaneous attraction for Srimad Bhagavatam. One must be situated in pure devotional service before he can relish Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. So, why did Srila Prabhupada in 1970 publish and widely distribute to the general public Krishna book? Any thoughts?
Oh, yes, because we didn't know about Krishna. He was also concerned that he could leave any moment. And if we would only start from the beginning, we would have come to understand or hear about Krishna's pastimes.
Okay, but then what do we do with all these injunctions about that we can't hear the 10th canto pastimes until we're...
Because he gave it perfectly with so many details how the consciousness should be while reading and hearing about those pastimes.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Anyone else?
I was just thinking, go ahead, Prabhu.
No, go ahead, Mataji, please.
Okay, yeah, just Srila Prabhupada really weaves in throughout Krishna book to not misunderstand the pastimes. And if people were to somehow, they hear, oh, you're not supposed to jump to the 10th canto, but then they do anyways, then they totally misunderstand it. So I feel like this was Srila Prabhupada's way of presenting Krishna and his beautiful pastimes in a way for us to not misunderstand it, should we have read it otherwise.
Thank you. All right, so Rupa Goswami is seemingly criticizing deity worship and criticizing the Bhagavatam in his way of praising it, and quite humorous. All right, and chanting the holy name. Somebody could read this.
It is said that saints have been able to hear the vibrating strings of the veena in the hands of Narada, who is always singing the glories of the Lord Krishna. Now, this same sound vibration has entered my ears, and I am always feeling the presence of the Supreme Personality. Gradually, I am becoming bereft of all attachment for material enjoyment.
Very nice. Now, for all five of these practices, what? Yes?
Something about the previous one, that we should not read the Bhagavatam, we should not start from the 10th canto. It's similar to what that mantra from Rupa Goswami, that don't look at Krishna.
Are you going to see it also backwards? Don't read the 10th canto.
Yes.
That's cute. Okay, thank you. So in all of these 5 processes is chanting. When you're deity, worshiping the deity, you're chanting mantras and kirtan. When we studied the Bhagavatam, we chant about Krishna. We associate with devotees, we're chanting. And everywhere we go in Mathura Mandala, there's chanting. So the chanting pervades all 5. You could also say the association of devotees pervades all 5. So going to holy places. So someone who could read this.
This feeling about Mathura Mandala and Vrindavana described by Rupa Goswami can actually be felt even by non-devotees. The places in the 168 square mile district of Mathura are so beautifully situated on the banks of the river Yamuna that anyone who goes there will never want to return to this material world.
And then we're told that if we simply remember the Dham, we can become attracted to Krishna. And certainly if we live there. And we have the association of devotees. And again, the association of devotees also pervades the other 4 most potent. And this great attraction to Krishna that's described, all this is the result of the association with great devotees. The whole process of bhakti can be described as association with devotees. Now, this is a very important statement. If somebody could read this, please.
In these statements, go ahead, Mataji.
In these statements about devotional service, sometimes it may appear that the results have been overestimated, but actually there is no overestimation. Some devotees, as revealed scriptures give evidence, have had immediate results by such association, although this is not possible for all. For a person who is already in contact with Krishna consciousness, the described results are not unusual.
Thank you. So, all these statements that Rupa Goswami has given us, you just drink the Charnamrita, you just follow the procession, they're true. There's that much potency in the activities, and some people will get immediate results like that, but not everyone. That doesn't mean that they're not true. It just means that it depends on the person. All right, now we finished the 64 angas, and now we're going to look at what's not the 64 angas. And some of this has actually already been described previously, but Rupa Goswami is going to emphasize it again, right? He's already talked about how Varnasrama is not an anga of bhakti, and he's going to talk about some others as well. So we're going to relook at Varnasrama, right? And Prabhupada says, some scholars argue that simply by following the principles of Varna and Ashram, one can gradually rise to the perfections reached by practicing devotional service. But this argument is not accepted by the great authorities. So Lord Chaitanya, Ramananda Roy, they did not accept this. Varna and Ashram can help support bhakti. And as we've already read, some of the practices of Varna and Ashram are also practices of bhakti. But just doing Varna and Ashram isn't going to be enough to bring one to pure devotional service. Let's go on to chapter 14. So this is completing the discussion on the 64 angas, elaborating on the 5 potent forms described in chapter 12, and beginning to discuss some things that are wrongly considered to be angas of bhakti. Okay, things that people think are angas of bhakti but are not. So what are not angas of bhakti? Jnana and vairagya are not angas of bhakti. So jnana and vairagya do not fix the mind on Krishna. In jnana, you're fixing your mind on what's matter and what's spirit. In vairagya, you're focusing on rejection. So they're not having you think of Krishna. Now, in the beginning, knowledge and renunciation can help you withdraw your mind from sense gratification so they can support bhakti, like Varnashram can support bhakti, but they're not directly angas of bhakti. So somebody could read this, please.
Some scholars recommend that knowledge and renunciation are important factors for elevating oneself to devotional service, but actually that is not a fact. Actually, the cultivation of knowledge or renunciation, which are favorable for achieving a footing in Krishna consciousness, may be accepted in the beginning, but ultimately they may also come to be rejected, for devotional service is dependent on nothing other than the sentiment or desire for such service. It requires nothing more than sincerity.
Thank you. Now, we do find that there are angas of bhakti which appear to be like karma, jnana, yoga, and vairagya. Just like in yoga, you're meditating, there's angas of bhakti that involve meditation. In jnana, you're getting free from attachment and aversion. That was one of the first 20 items of the angas of bhakti, to be free from attachment and aversion. Right? In vairagya, you're giving up bad association. Quite a few of the angas of bhakti deal with giving up bad things and giving up bad association. But they're not being done separately from bhakti. They're being done to please Krishna. They're being done to love Krishna. They're not being done in and of themselves. Bhakti doesn't need jnana vairagya. It doesn't need that. You don't have, this is again Arjuna's question in the beginning of the 12th chapter. Do I already have to be self-realized before I can take up bhakti? This is going to be very important when we look at the eligibility for Raganuga sadhana in a few minutes. You know, this question, do I have to become self-realized by a different process other than bhakti? So if I just want to please Krishna, there's no material desires. Of course, it pleases Krishna, as Krishna explains in chapter 12, verses 13 through 20. If I'm detached from happiness and distress, honor and dishonor, fame and infamy, friends, enemies, and neutral. But I'm doing that to please Krishna. I'm not doing that as an independent process. Now, jnana and vairagya can also harm bhakti, because in bhakti, one pleases the Lord by love, which requires a soft heart that's easily moved by emotions. But knowledge and renunciation train one to have a stoic heart, unmoved by emotions. For emotions tend to push one to sense gratification, so they can impede devotional service. And this is a very important point. Most processes of jnana and vairagya teach one to make one's desires and thoughts and emotions nothing, to harden the heart. And then it's very difficult to have a soft heart for bhakti. So there's got to be a means to cultivate detachment without using jnana and vairagya. There has to be, because they are angas of bhakti. And this is called Yukta-vairagya. And this is a very famous verse. Anashaktasya vishayan yattarham upayunjitaha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe Yukta-vairagyam uchite. We should accept whatever would be pleasing to Krishna without trying to enjoy it. So if it pleases Krishna that I'm detached from happiness and distress and fame and infamy and honor and dishonor, then I accept it. If there's some object that pleases Krishna, I will accept it. Okay, can someone read this one and the next slide, 2 slides?
One should not give up anything which can be utilized in the service of the Lord. That is the secret of devotional service. Anything that can be utilized in advancing Krishna consciousness and devotional service should be accepted. For instance, we are using many machines for the advancement of our present Krishna consciousness movement. Machines like typewriters, dictating machines, tape recorders, microphones, and airplanes. Sometimes people ask us, why are you utilizing material products if we condemn the advancement of material civilization? But actually, we do not condemn. We simply ask people to do whatever they are doing in Krishna consciousness. This is the same principle on which in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advised Arjuna to utilize his fighting abilities in devotional service. Similarly, we are utilizing these machines for Krishna's service.
Very nice. So as we talked about earlier, if our service is such and we can live simply without all these machines, that's fine. If our service is to use these machines, we use them. And here's a very nice example with food, which is also, of course, part of Prabhupada's mission. Someone else, if you could read this.
Srila Rupa Goswami then recommends that one should not be attached to material sense enjoyment, but should accept everything enjoyable which is in relationship to Krishna. For example, eating is necessary, and one wants some palatable dishes to satisfy his sense of taste. So in that case, for the satisfaction of Krishna, rather than for the satisfaction of the tongue, some palatable dishes may be prepared and offered to Krishna. Then it is renunciation. Let the palatable dishes be prepared, but unless they are offered to Krishna, one should not accept them for eating. This vow of rejecting anything which is not offered to Krishna is actually renunciation. And by such renunciation, one is able to satisfy the demands of the senses.
Very nice. Definitely part of Srila Prabhupada's mission, wide-scale, opulent prasadam distribution. Now, this is the point, that in Yukta-vairagya, the senses are active, the emotions are active, so the heart doesn't harden. But because they're used for Krishna, it doesn't become sense gratification. Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this beautiful? We can have, in Yukta-vairagya, we get all the results of Gyan and Vairagya without a hard heart. We keep our emotions, we keep our thoughts, we keep desires, but in such a way that we don't get entangled in sense gratification, nor do we get hard-hearted. We want to avoid falgu vairagya. If I say, I'm not going to use something that could actually please Krishna, that would harm bhakti. I'm not going to use something, but it would please Krishna. That's false renunciation. That's actually going to hurt my bhakti. All right, then Rupa Goswami talks about also what's not angas of bhakti. Service done through money, service done through followers. So service done through followers. So if we have a lot of students or we have disciples and they do service, that's their service. It's not my service, it's their service. So it's not that I can have a lot of disciples or students who do a lot of things and then I just sleep all day. That's my service. So it's the same with money. The act of giving in charity is my service. What someone does with that money is their service. So it's not that, again, I can sleep all day and I'm just going to make donations to places. And then I think, well, I don't have to do anything because all the other people are using my money in service. No, I have to, that the giving of the donation was my service. What's being done with the wealth is their service. Now, this is an important point when we collect donations from people, that we want the act of giving to be an act of bhakti. One should feel that the very act of giving is their bhakti. Interesting that cultivating of saintly qualities without doing that to please Krishna, is that a part of sadhana bhakti? So again, no. It could just put me in sattva-gun. If I'm just forgiving and merciful and tolerant and equipoise, I could just end up in sattva-gun and not think about Krishna. We've all met sattva-gun types who don't think about Krishna. Now, if I want to please Krishna, I will develop good qualities to please him. Like if I want to please my wife or my husband or my children, I'll act nicely. But that's to please Krishna. And these saintly qualities automatically come in a devotee. When you please Krishna, naturally you become saintly, because when you want to please Krishna, naturally you want to act saintly. And Prabhupada says, you can be a vegetarian and not be a devotee, but if you're a devotee, you'll be a vegetarian. And the examples given of Mrigali, the hunter, that when he became a devotee, he naturally became saintly. All right, so we have these 64 angas, and we can divide them. You remember previously we divided them into like body, mind, words, and taste, sound, touch, and smell, etc. We can also divide these 64 angas into 9 processes: hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. And Prabhupada makes a strong point that we can achieve prema bhakti by all of them, or even by just one. And Rupa Goswami gives us examples, and we have this in Mayapurdam and Prabhupada Samadhi. Each of these 9 processes and the exemplar of each of them. So the exemplary person of hearing was Maharaj Burkett. These are persons who attained perfection in this way by chanting was Sukadeva Goswami, remembering Prahlad Maharaj, praying Akrura, worshiping the Lord's feet is Lakshmi. Worshiping the Lord's feet includes taking care of Tulsi, going to holy places, taking care of the devotees. Deity worship Prithu Maharaj, servitude Hanuman, friendship Arjuna, complete surrender Bali Maharaj, and all 9 together Maharaj Ambrish. All right, this ends the section on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And the next 2 chapters are the next wave, the 3rd wave in the Eastern Ocean on Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. Chapter 15 is about Ragatmika Bhakti, and chapter 16 on Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, we'll get there. Prashant asked me when we get to the right place, because we're not at the right place yet. I may forget when we get there. Okay, chapter 15 is about Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika Bhakti is the spontaneous devotion that's different from the regulated devotion of the perfected beings in Vrindavan and to some extent in Mathura and Dwarka. Now, originally in Nectar Devotion, and I think some of this has been fixed with the edited versions, Prabhupada used Raganuga for both the perfected devotees and the practicing devotees, but in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he uses Ragatmika for the perfected spontaneous devotees, and Raganuga. Anu means smaller, younger, or to follow. So the Raganuga are following the Ragatmika. Okay, so Rupa Goswami is defining Ragatmika, spontaneous attraction for something while completely absorbed in thoughts of it with an intense desire of love. So that's our definition of Ragatmika Bhakti. And he's making 2 main categories, sensual attraction, which is conjugal love, and relationship, which is the other process. Now, he does talk about how there can be many different emotions, like even lust, fear, and envy, service, affection, and kinship. Some intense desire is going on, some intense emotion. Now, although Prabhupada explains that although we can talk about the gopis with the word kama, which generally means lust, this just means they have an extreme desire for Krishna. And it's the only word we can understand that makes sense. But he references Krishna Das Kaviraj, who is saying that lust means I want to satisfy my own senses, and love is I want to satisfy Krishna's senses. And we don't find that purely in this world. We find that to some extent in this world. So I may want to satisfy my husband, my wife, my children, my friends, just for their satisfaction, at least to some extent. But usually I'm also looking simultaneously for something for myself. Now, there are examples given of demons who had strong emotions for Krishna, like Kamsa and Shishupal, and Rupa Goswami saying that they attained the same destination as the gopis through their anger and envy. And Prabhupada at length describes that same destination means they all go to the spiritual sky, but the demons go to the Brahmajyoti, whereas the devotees enter into the spiritual planets. Of course, sometimes the demons end up getting purified and entering into the spiritual planets. But usually the demons and the impersonalists just go to the Brahmajyoti. And so there's example of the purity of the gopis' love is the strictness of Lord Chaitanya, who was a very strict sannyasi, but still he talked about the gopis. Now, there's an example given of Kubja, of someone whose love is almost pure. So there was a question here, right? Kubja's attraction is not Kamapraya. Yes, Kubja's attraction is Kamapraya, but it's not as pure as the gopis' love. There's degrees of purity even in the spiritual world. And this is very interesting. This is really a topic that's discovered, and I know I've talked about it before, in the follow-up book to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is Ujjwala Nilamani, that focuses entirely on the Madhurya Bhav, the conjugal relationship. And there Rupa Goswami says that the gopis have something called samartha love, which means that their happiness and Krishna's happiness are identical. That they don't have like, there's Krishna's happiness and there's my happiness. It's all about Krishna's happiness, and their happiness is included. That the queens of Dwarka are generally like that, but sometimes they see their happiness separately. And that famous verse in the Bhagavatam about the queens not being able to attract Krishna, Rupa Goswami says that those are the times when the queens are thinking about their own happiness separately. Then Kubja is even at a lower level where she's primarily concerned with her own happiness and just secondarily concerned with pleasing Krishna.
Mother?
Yes.
I have one question. When you said that Gopi's happiness is what is Krishna's happiness, but
Yes.
Krishna is the seed-giving father for every entity on
Yes.
all the different planets. But
Yes.
Gopis have love for Krishna, but Krishna has love for everybody equally. Does Gopis also have love in the same way as Krishna loves, like a stone or something on a different planet and something else?
Do you mean do the gopis also love everybody?
Exactly, because Krishna loves everybody without
Not only not only the gopis, but all pure devotees love everybody. Even the residents of Vaikuntha, they love everybody.
As
Yes,
same as Krishna.
Why then do the gopis? Well, we can never be exactly the same as Krishna.
Yeah, because every time when they say
But
that Gopis' love is exactly same as Krishna, this is what I don't understand it, because they were more
in a
focused
similar
for
way.
Krishna.
This is why some of the residents of the spiritual world come to the material world to teach about Krishna, because they love everyone. So yes, this love for everyone is felt, obviously not as great as Krishna's love for everyone, but it is felt by any pure devotee. Yes.
Yeah, because at one instance it clearly tells that when gopis were trying to find for Krishna and Narayana himself comes, and they are not really interested in looking at the Narayana's form, and they were saying that, okay, we want to look for Krishna. So that tells that gopis were more specific towards Krishna.
Yes, well, this we find in general, we've talked about this before, how Hanuman is more interested in Ram. So some devotees are more interested in Narayana, and some are more interested in Krishna, some are more interested in Ram, like that. All right, now in chapter 15, Rupa Goswami establishes Ragatmaka Bhakti. What is the spontaneous devotion of the perfected beings? And now in chapter 16, he's going to describe Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous devotional service and practice. So this is how to follow the Ragatmaka devotees. It's, I would say, one of the most misunderstood topics in the Hare Krishna movement. So here is described the eligibility for Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, the categories of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and the practices. How do you do Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti? Now, we should remember what Srila Prabhupada wrote in chapter 2. So if somebody could read this, please.
Another part of sadhana bhakti is called Raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arati, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of his spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arati. But then he develops real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous.
Thank you. So this is a pretty simple definition. Are you getting up for Mangal Arati because you're supposed to, or because you want to see Krishna? Now, Srila Prabhupada also makes this point: spontaneous love for Krishna as exhibited by the Vrishnis and the denizens of Vrindavan is eternally existing of them. In the stage of devotional service where regulated principles are followed, there is no necessity of discussing this love, for it must develop of itself at a more advanced stage. Now you might say, well, then he's just going to go on to talk about it. So why is Prabhupada telling us don't talk about it, and then he's going to talk about it? If I look at how Srila Prabhupada responded to questions on this topic, if devotees ask Srila Prabhupada questions about Raganuga sadhana bhakti from a purely philosophical and intellectual point of view, Prabhupada would pretty much, most of the time, just shut them down. Like I know of a devotee who wrote to Prabhupada, how do you get from bhava to prema? And Prabhupada said, you're not ready to ask that question, ask later. That was usually Prabhupada's response. However, when devotees, even very new devotees, even in the 1960s, asked Srila Prabhupada about their emotional attachment to Krishna in a particular way, all the instances I know of, Srila Prabhupada encouraged them. You know, there's one conversation, I think it's with Hamsaduta, where he says, you know, one of the devotees wants to be a cowherd boy, and they were presenting it to Prabhupada as something wrong, and Prabhupada was, that's very nice. That's our goal. So very interesting. When people approach Srila Prabhupada philosophically, how can I philosophically understand this? Prabhupada, just not for you. And when people approach Srila Prabhupada, I'm having this feeling of attachment toward Krishna, Prabhupada would be encouraged. Now, keep in mind that although Raganuga sadhana is considered an advanced stage, it's still in the realm of practice. We're not talking about perfected devotees. So let's look at eligibility. So here's Rupa Goswami's verse. That person who's greedy for developing a bhava similar to that of the inhabitants of Vraja is qualified for Raganuga bhava. That's eligibility. Now, this is a very interesting definition of eligibility. Prabhupada says this in the purport to Adi 434, which is taken right out of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we'll read in a minute. Special natural appreciation of the descriptions of a particular pastime of Godhead indicates the constitutional position of a living entity. So if a person really feels, again, it's an emotional, desiring thing. So if whenever a person reads about Mother Yasoda and Mother Rohini or Nanda Maharaj, and they're moved emotionally, especially a special natural appreciation. And it's natural. It's not like, Nanda Maharaj is really nice, maybe I'd like to serve. It's not like that. It's a natural, just like, it's this feeling. Oh, I'd like to serve Krishna like that. Why can't I serve Krishna like that? That would be wonderful. So this indicates a person's rasa. Now here's the quote that Prabhupada is basing that on from CC, from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Can someone read this, please?
When an advanced realized devotee hears about the affairs of the devotees of Vrindavan in the mellows of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, he becomes inclined in one of these ways, and his intelligence becomes attracted. Indeed, he begins to covet that particular type of devotion. When such covetousness is awakened, one's intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of Shastra, revealed scripture, or on logic and argument.
So this is, yes, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12292, which Prabhupada was was quoting from in the previous slide. So when a person's like, yes, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. Now, Prabhupada says an advanced and realized devotee. In other words, this is not something just somebody visits the temple one time. That's possible, but basically it doesn't happen. Somebody visits the temple one time and says, oh, you know, I like the cowherd boys, or I like the gopis, or I want to go to Dwarka. You know, it's not like that. It's that one is absorbed in practicing bhakti and these emotions arise.
What does it mean, realized devotee?
So it's something that you realize. Again, it's not a matter of the intellect.
That one feels naturally attractive.
Yes. I mean, and if we're going to give a material comparison. So when I was 24, I met Jyotirmayi, my god sister, and she trained me how to teach children. So before that, I didn't even really feel very attracted to children. I really wasn't that interested. And I never thought of myself as a teacher. I had been teaching people since I was 3, but I was always gotten in trouble for it. I was always told, stop teaching people. So I thought it was something wrong with me. And when Jyotirmayi, by her association, it awakened a natural ability in mine. I realized I had always been a teacher. And I realized that. I've always been a teacher. It was something realized. It was something experienced on the platform of, you know, again, that's a material example, but you know, sometimes a person will go to an astrologer or a, you know, therapist, or even talking to a friend, and they'll say, you know, you're like this and this, and then you're like, oh yeah, I am like that. I really am like that. You realize it. So when a devotee reads and hears these things, that's what I am. That's what I want. Now, when we say their intelligence no longer depends on the instructions of Shastra or logic and argument. So this is another verse here given by
Krishna Mataji, like,
yes.
I just want to clarify the Raganuga. Like you said, it comes suddenly, right? Like spontaneously. Yes, I wanted to be like that. But sometimes after, if somebody feels like that, and then again we are in this material world, then we just started probing into that. Is it real or not real? Or so.
That's very nice you say that, because Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur in Madhurya Kadambini says that that's exactly what the devotees are going to do. That when that inspiration comes, and it may not come in one sudden moment, I think often it does, but it may not. Just like sometimes in this world, when people fall in love, it's a sudden thing. Oh, I love that person. Or it may be something that grows on them gradually. That may depend. Or if a person cultivated this in another life, it may be something from the beginning that they're aware of. Wow, I really want to be in this relationship with Krishna. But to doubt whether or not it's real is one of the prime symptoms of the fact that it's real, which sounds really funny. But this is one of the things that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur brings up, that one will say, is that real? Did I imagine that? Do I actually feel this way? I couldn't be qualified. Prabhupada talks about being free from inartas, and I have a gazillion, million, billion inartas, and there's no way I could feel this. So it's one of the primary symptoms of it being real. If somebody, one of the primary symptoms of eligibility is this humility. If someone says, oh yeah, you know, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 40 years and it's time for me to be a gopi because I'm so advanced, then immediately you can see it's not real. That's a very nice point. So here we have another part of eligibility, when the intelligence does not depend on rules of scripture and logic, after realizing to some degree the sweetness of their love through the process of hearing through the scriptures. So in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, the reason someone is doing bhakti is primarily Shastra, logic, and reason. That's their main reason for doing bhakti. And remember, we talked about eligibility for Vaidhi bhakti is how much scripture you know and how much you have faith in scripture. In Raganuga sadhana bhakti, the main reason you're doing bhakti is you really like Krishna. Now, there's some I really like Krishna even in the beginning. Rupa Goswami writes about how the main qualification for taking up Vaidhi is some taste. But if we want to think about proportionally, in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, the bulk of one's motive is faith in scripture or faith in guru, and there's some taste. In Raga, it switches. The main motive is some taste. So we might also note that the devotee, they're not dependent on the scriptures for their inspiration. But of course, they had to study the scriptures to get that inspiration. Usually, I mean, maybe some illiterate person not. And they still love the scriptures, but it's not that they're dependent on logic for their inspiration. If someone comes and says, well, in this Purana, it says that Shiva is supreme, they're going to go, I don't care. I like Krishna. I don't care if Shiva is supreme. I like Krishna. I hope that's very clear. It's one of the main symptoms of being eligible, that one's motive for doing bhakti starts to be about loving Krishna and being around Krishna and how wonderful Krishna is in one's emotion. Again, if we're going to think about a mundane example. So let's say a person is staying in a marriage primarily because it's the right dharmic thing to do, and they also have some attachment to their spouse. Or if someone is staying in a marriage because they're absolutely in love with their spouse, and it's also the right and dharmic thing to do. So this is like the difference. You know, someone who's taking care of their child because they're supposed to, it's their child and it's their responsibility, and they also have attachment to their child. Or someone taking care of their child because they just love taking care of their child, and it's also the right thing. Or someone going to work primarily to make a living, maybe to contribute to society, and they may enjoy their work and they like their work, but if they didn't have to make a living, they wouldn't do it. Or somebody going to work because they love their work. And even if they didn't have to make a living and they weren't getting paid, they would still do that kind of work. Maybe not in the same office or for the same company, but they would still do their kind of work because they're doing it because they love it. So this is some material analogies to give us some idea.
I have a question on this point.
Yes.
So just, I guess, in the beginning of someone's Krishna consciousness, like really new person, because this was my experience, how do we like essentially help people find a balance between like feeling and also like, okay, but there's like ways, there's like processes to help you further develop that feeling? Because I had a situation where someone knew who I was with. They were just like, they're having this realization. I love Krishna. I'm just like having this total realization. And it's like, yes, I wanted to encourage that feeling of devotion, but at the same time, I'm okay. She doesn't like really love Krishna because she doesn't like no, it's like
well,
so, like,
it's hard to say. One of the most discouraging things that happened to me in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was when I'd been staying in the ashram maybe 3 weeks, and I was with a group of devotees in a vehicle going to O'Hare Airport to distribute books. And I mean, I had been chanting off and on a little bit here and there for years, and I'd already read Bhagavad Gita and Krishna book, but honestly, I was still very much an impersonalist. And so we're in the van going to O'Hare Airport, and this one brahmacharini, Krishna Mai was her name. Actually, it's interesting, before Bir Krishna Swami initiated my daughter, he gave me a list of 4 names, and he says, would you be upset if I named her any of these 4? And one was Krishna Mai. I said, don't name her Krishna Mai. So there was this brahmacharini, Krishna Mai, who was very harsh with me. And so I'm in the van saying, I just don't like distributing books so much because I just love Krishna so much. And she looked at me, she said, you don't love Krishna. And I was so devastated. I was just devastated. I thought, then why am I here if I don't love Krishna? Let me go back to university. Let me go back to my parents' house. What am I doing here if I don't love Krishna? I had an experience when I lived here previously where I was giving Bhagavatam class and I was speaking from the Madhurya Kadambini. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that in the beginning of our spiritual life, our love for ourselves is absolute and our interest in Krishna is just a trace. And, you know, he goes on this proportionate decrease of our self-absorption and our increase in absorption for Krishna. And I was simply describing Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. Anyway, there was one devotee that then didn't come to my classes for about 3 weeks. And I saw her and I said, how come you haven't been coming to my classes? And she said, I just feel so hurt that you were saying, I have barely a trace of love for Krishna. I said, I wasn't talking about you. I was just saying something from Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. So the difficulty is if people say that they're attached to Krishna in a particular way before they're actually mature. So if somebody just wants to say, I love Krishna, that's wonderful. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely encouraged it.
Great.
I was
You
like,
know,
and Krishna loves you.
I mean, yeah, if somebody's been in the movement a week and they say, you know, well, I just feel like I'm Krishna's father, then you might say, you know, well, that's possible. Because it is possible. I mean, and we're going to look at bhava next week and how it's possible for a brand new person to exhibit symptoms of bhava if they were advanced in a previous life. Also, there's shadow and reflected bhava. When I was teaching Nectar Devotion in Vrindavan last time, there was a group of devotees there, and they had brought with them a non-devotee guest that they were taking around Vrindavan. So he was attending my Nectar Devotion classes, and I'm pretty sure it was after a class on this chapter. He comes up to me afterwards, privately, he's talking to me privately, and he says, you know, I've been having these feelings. And he seemed like, I mean, I didn't know him, but he seemed like a very solid, grounded, stable kind of person. And he was just describing how, he said, in the class that I had just given, when we were talking about these things, he was describing some specific feelings he was having. And then he said, you know, this also happened to me this morning when I was in the kirtan. And I thought about it, and I thought, he's in Vrindavan. You know, he's in Vrindavan. He's hearing this book from Rupa Goswami. It's possible. That's possible. So I didn't want to just smash him to smithereens. And I said, you know, keep this to yourself and be extremely, extremely cautious. I said, you know, be cautious to the max. You can try to, you know, water it a little bit, but be extremely cautious. I mean, he wasn't even initiated. Just basically visiting Vrindavan. But those sort of things are possible. And I have seen people, you know, I've seen both ends of things. I've seen people who imagine that they were gopis, you know, in some crazy thing. I haven't seen it very often, frankly. I've seen it maybe only 2 or 3 times. But I've seen dozens of cases where people genuinely had feelings when they were smashed and bashed. Dozens of such situations where people's, you know, little tender creepers were just stepped on and ground into the earth. So as I've seen maybe 2 cases of people on some artificial platform. One was a person who was actually mentally ill, and another was a senior devotee who came to me and said, well, you know, I've been chanting Hare Krishna long enough, it's time. I just need to do this now. And I thought, no, it's not the way. It's not an intellectual thing. So if the newer someone is, and the more specific their discussion is, the more I would use a lot of caution. But Prabhupada personally encouraged even uninitiated people who said they had some specific feeling of attachment for Krishna. He did. He genuinely did. In fact, I don't know of any cases where he didn't. What he would stop was a lot of intellectual curiosity. So.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're very welcome. So this is the way that's explained by Rupa Goswami. We hear particular pastimes. We feel a certain sense of sweetness in those pastimes. We feel greed. And then when we say decrease in scriptural regulation, it doesn't mean that you stop chanting your rounds or you go out and eat hamburgers. It means that the logic of the scriptures is not your main motivation. Your main motivation is your relationship. All right, so this is an important point that somebody may argue. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta warned that this awakening happens only to those who are liberated, and they will use such terms. At the same time, both Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada follow Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswamis, and they present Raganuga as a sadhana done by sadhakas. So even though they use words like complete or total or liberation, it actually isn't something absolute. It's something relative. So this is Prabhupada's explanation. He says, in following the regulative principles of devotional service, there is a stage called anartha-nivritti, which means a disappearance of all material contamination. And anartha-nivritti is a stage in the middle of practice. Now, Prabhupada would often define anartha-nivritti as just free from breaking the four regulative principles. Frankly, he wasn't always defining it as, you're free from all lust, anger, envy, greed, and illusion. So from a gross materialistic point of view, such a person is liberated. But for those on the highest platform, they're not. So it depends on your perspective. Also, according to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, after about 40% of the anarthas are gone, one becomes nishta. Prabhupada would often say 50%. So somewhere 40 to 50% of anarthas are gone. And nishta is considered liberated. Now, those who are at nishta don't exactly feel fully liberated. And the best analogy I can give is parole. So if there's a criminal who they're in jail, and then they're paroled, they're let out of jail, but they still have to see their parole officer. And if they mess up, they can go back to jail. So are they free or are they not free? Well, they're free, but they're not free. They're kind of on the edge. And nishta is the stage in sadhana bhakti where about half of one's anarthas are gone. An analogy I give for this is like the cleaning of the mirror. So you have a really, really dirty mirror. Once you've cleaned about half of it, you can start to see what you look like. You don't have to have the whole mirror clean before you can see what you look like. And Haridas Thakur explains that liberation happens before the sun rises. He says, even before the sun rises, when it's below the horizon, you can start to see things clearly. You can't see all the colors, but you can start to see all the shapes. And so this stage is considered liberated because the influence of Rajagun and Tamagun is greatly decreased. And one can start to see something of one's spiritual identity. So from the point of view of the Ragamika Bhaktis, such people are still in a gradual stage of awakening. They still harbor subtle anarthas. Now, we also notice Prabhupada writes there is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Raganuga. Prabhupada talks about gradual. It's not like maybe this happens to somebody, but from the Shastra, it's not like a person just wakes up and go, oh, I'm a gopi named such and such, and I live here, and I dress like this, and this is my service. It's gradually, it's usually something like, oh, I think I have a conjugal relationship. Oh, and then it may take years before a person understands more about their nature. Again, if we think about materially, the process of realizing your career, realizing your personality, it usually unfolds gradually. All right. Now, why is Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta so heavy about not doing this prematurely? Because they were dealing with all of these charlatans. Okay, so somebody could read this.
In this connection, I have been reading.
Go ahead.
In this connection, we should be careful about the so-called Siddha Pranali. The Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of devotional service. They imagine that they have become associates of the Lord simply by thinking of themselves like that. This external behavior is not at all according to the regulative principles. The so-called Siddha Pranali process is followed by the Prakrita Sahaya, a pseudo-sect of so-called Vaishnavas. In the opinion of Rupa Goswami, such activities are simply disturbances to the standard way of devotional service.
So we have a situation where the Prakrita Sahaja, Prakrita means material, Sahaja means something that comes natural to you. So these are people who don't follow the regulations. They're smoking, they're drinking, they're having illicit sex, and they dress up as gopis and they say, now I'm a gopi. And they may also take up this Siddha Pranali. So what is Siddha Pranali? So Siddha Pranali is explained by Bhakti Vinod in Harinam Chintamani and Jaiva Dharma, based on the work of Dhanachandra Goswami, who's a grand disciple of Vikeshwar Pandit. And Dhanachandra Goswami gives details of Siddha Pranali in his book Gaur Govinda Smarana Padati. Actually, I think it's Gaur Govinda Archana Smarana Padati, where, as Bhakti Vinod delineates, there's 11 elements of one's spiritual identity: one's name, one's age, one's form, one's dress, where one lives, what group one's in, and so forth. So this idea of Siddha Pranali is, if we look at the meditation stages, if you can remember the 5 stages of meditation, at the second stage of meditation, or Varna Das, then the guru says to the disciple, okay, I want you to meditate on being a manjari named so-and-so, and you're this age, and so forth. So the Siddha Pranali is only there for manjari bhav. It's not there for Sakhi bhav. It's not there for Sakya bhav, or Vatsalya bhav, or Dasi bhav. And it's not an unbonafide process. It comes from this grand disciple of Vikeshwar Pandit. It's accepted by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. But it's not the process mentioned by any of the 6 Goswamis. None of the 6 Goswamis mention this Siddha Pranali process. And it's something that was taken over as a cheap process by the Sahajis. So it's certainly not necessary for Siddha Pranali in order to achieve one's spiritual identity. All the aspects of one's spiritual identity will be revealed by following the process of Raganuga sadhana given by Rupa Goswami. So there may be some bona fide practitioners of Siddha Pranali, because it is a bona fide process. However, the vast majority of people who practice this are doing something that's unauthorized. So what is the actual process of Raganuga sadhana bhakti? Now, this next quote also applies to a large extent even to Vaidhi sadhana, but it applies specifically to Raganuga sadhana, as one looks at the angas of the 64 angas of bhakti, and especially does those that nourish their specific relationship with Krishna. So if one has the sense of wanting to be a cowherd boy, then one will especially focus on the 64 angas of bhakti that will nurture their mood of a cowherd boy. So could somebody read this, please?
One should specifically engage himself in the type of devotional service for which he has a natural aptitude. For example, one person may have a particular interest in hearing, another may have a particular interest in chanting, and another may have a particular interest in
This does apply even in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, that devotees should do service according to their taste and their propensity. But it especially applies in Raganuga sadhana bhakti. There's extensive commentary in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this, that while the devotee may still do all the processes of bhakti, in Raganuga sadhana, one especially focus on those that nourish one's relationship with Krishna. Okay, so that's the first part about how to practice Raganuga. Yes.
I just want to clarify that point, like
Yes.
just now you told. Like, so in Raganuga Bhakti, one will take a particular bhakti process which they have inclined into. For example, somebody can be interested in the deity worship or chanting or hearing. So particular element of bhakti. So they will get special, not they will get advanced in that particular element of bhakti only, or they will also follow other things like
They may follow other things. I mean, all of us, Prabhupada's given us all of us vows of 16 rounds and hearing the Bhagavatam. But let's say that one devotee finds, let's say a devotee is realized that they want to be a follower of Nanda Maharaj. And they find that when they take care of their deities, when they serve their deities, it really develops their sense of being like one of the fathers of Krishna. So they may spend a lot of time on their deity worship, and they may do very elaborate deity worship. Now, someone else who feels that they want to follow Nanda Maharaj, they might feel that when I'm reading the Bhagavatam stories, that especially, so they may spend extra time in reading Bhagavatam stories to awaken their feeling of paternal love towards Krishna. And someone else may feel, you know, when I'm doing kirtan, I especially awaken my paternal feelings. So they may be doing lots and lots of kirtan. So everybody should do kirtan, and everybody should do deity worship, and everybody should do the Bhagavatam. But in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, there may be certain things that you really like to do, that you do a lot of. But in Raganuga, you're going to choose the things to focus on that really nurture your feelings of attachment for Krishna, your particular mood. Is that clear?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. So that's one of the aspects of Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Now, another aspect. The devotee should always think of Krishna within himself. That, of course, is for everyone. But this is specific to Raganuga, and should choose a very dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan. One should constantly engage in topics about that servitor and his loving relationship with Krishna, and one should live in Vrindavan. If one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. So, okay. So to follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna's in Vrindavan. So let's say that one has a feeling, I want to be a cowherd boy. So one may particularly meditate on Subal or Sridham or Madhu Mangal or one of the cowherd boys. Now, then externally, you act like a Vaidhi Bhakta. Externally, no one's going to look at you.
Hare Krishna, like I have another doubt here. Like you said, one can meditate upon Subala or Madhumangala. Where can we find about these gopas extensively and deeply in the literature? Or I don't know. Like I can, when I read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's kind of overview about them, but
Yes.
not very detailed.
Yes, this is definitely a situation. This is definitely a situation that the the Bhagavatam, sorry, is only giving us information about a few of these personalities. And even if you look at the literature of the Goswamis, like there's a lot more about Lalita than there is about Vishaka. There's very little about Sudevi. I mean, that's the reality. There's a lot about Subala. There's not as much about Sridhama. And then there's not as much about the cowherd boy named Arjuna or Stoka Krishna. There's just not as much about them. That is true. But at the beginning, one can focus on at least the representative person, because generally in the beginning, one doesn't know specifically who one follows. Sometimes. But in the beginning, one could just meditate on Lalita or on Rupa Goswami or on Subala. And then gradually, as one does that, these personalities will reveal themselves to the sadhaka, and they'll reveal what specific person they should follow. And as that revelation takes place in the heart, then the devotee's following is going to become more specific. And then these things will be revealed in the heart, even if not all these activities are given in the Shastra. Thank you for asking that. Then externally, such a person looks like anybody else. So You're not going to see a different externally. So internally, the person is meditating on a resident of Vrindavan that's similar in their mood. Externally, they look like everybody else, but they will be taking up the angas of bhakti that particularly support their mood. So these are the steps. Think of Krishna, choose a devotee who's very dear servitor in a relationship similar to what has awakened within oneself, and discuss this devotee's activities. Physically or mentally live in Vrindavan. Meditate on the relationship of service between Krishna and his devotee. Do not show this meditation externally. Externally act like a neophyte. Gradually, one will develop the internal sentiments of the devotee one is following. And again, one should take up the angas of bhakti that support that. So the physical body, we're following Rupa Goswami. In one's internal body, one's identifying as a cowherd boy, cowherd girl, etc., and meditating on the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. All right, now just like with Ragatmika, so with Raganuga, there's two to do with our Siddhadeya, and he gives some examples. Now, for those in conjugal mood, would they become a cowherd girl or a queen? So if someone stays in Vaidhi Bhakti, but they want a conjugal relationship, but they stay very formal, and they don't want the gopis kind of love, they become a queen in Dwarka. So they have an awakening of their mood to be in conjugal relationship with Krishna, but they still stay formal. And then within the conjugal rasa, and this is true for both the gopis and the queens, there's two different kinds of conjugal rasa. Sambhogecha Mai Bhakti, those who directly enjoy conjugally with Krishna, and Tad Bhave Chatmika Bhakti, those who don't enjoy directly with Krishna, but are relishing the conjugal mood. So there are assistants and so forth who they're enjoying Krishna's mood with the gopis or Krishna's mood with the queens. They're also psychologically, vicariously enjoying this conjugal mood, but they don't directly have Krishna enjoy them. And the other types of Raganuga are parental attachment, friendly attachment, or service attachment. So to follow Nanda or Subala and others. All right, now there's a caution that we shouldn't try to become Lalita or become Yasoda or become Nanda Maharaj. We want to follow them. It is possible some jivas like merge into the body of Nanda. This is explained with Dara and Drona with Nanda and Yasoda. But we're not advised to do this because it can become impersonal. Better to follow in their mood. And what's the cause of Raganuga? Mercy. The cause is mercy. The Lord's mercy or the devotee's mercy. And Prabhupada also mentioned Pushti Marg, which is, of course, done by the Balabha Sampradaya. Okay, so we just have 3 more minutes. If anybody has any other question.
Very, very heavy topics.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
When I read all these books, the 4 books, I just felt now like Prabhupada has given the broad general overview of all the things. Like it's our choice to take one particular and follow. But externally, if you want to preach to others, you have to give in a similar way to others, not putting our personal thoughts in it.
Yes,
the right
and he was to follow that she was a follower of Mother Yasoda. But Yamuna was preaching about all aspects, all the rasas. So, you know, if one has awakened to a particular flavor, one still speaks about Krishna in all of the rasas as a preacher, definitely. If that's what you meant. Is that what you meant?
Yes, yes. Thank you. It's really nice, interesting. It's wonderful explanation. It get rid of many of my doubts here. So
Oh, good.
I feel so happy for that.
Good. That's my service description.
Yeah.
That's my job description.
So I'm a kind of always getting confused with many things in my head. I'm not finding the right person to whom I can talk or ask or whatever it is. One of the senior devotee, when I was talking to her, she was telling, you should be thorough in philosophy. But she was asking me about the philosophy. So I'm not so great at philosophy, but I was telling, if every time one can chant the Hare Krishna mantra going on in my mind, why it's needed or something, I was just asking. Maybe I felt offended or whatever, I don't know, but it just came out, and then I asked sorry also.
Anyway, we should all try to understand philosophy, but again, if we're going to look at doing the angas according to our personal taste, for some of us that may not be our personal taste.
Yeah, now when you explained, it was really clear about that. I felt really clear.
Thank you. And I understand that is something very important. That even in the beginning stages, even in the beginning Vaidhi Bhakti, people should really be encouraged to focus on what is their personal taste, what gives them personal satisfaction. And especially as one goes on in Bhakti and as one starts to understand their relationship with Krishna, one really needs to do the things that gives them the angas of Bhakti that particularly grow their heart in that respect. It's just such an important thing. Any other questions? All right, well, next week is our last class on Bhava and Prema. I have another meeting that next Sunday. So I'll be teaching the first class on Bhava and Prema, 17 through 19. But then Brajananda Prabhu will need to take everybody into the review class. I'm not going to be able to teach the review class. And he'll also have to be proctoring you guys for the last test. So I'll be correcting your test, but I won't be able to be in the class where you're taking the test because I have some other things. So thank you very much. Whatever good you have heard is the blessings of Srila Prabhupada and all of my many Shiksha Gurus, and whatever faults are there, please don't copy my faults, and please excuse me for my faults. Rupa Goswami Ki Jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna. Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you very much, Mother, for a wonderful lecture. Hare Krishna. This is transcendental, definitely.
I hope so. I hope it's transcendental.
This sessions, for last 3 sessions, were really
If
nice.
it's not transcendental, we're in a lot of trouble. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.